Anyway, let's get on to the good part. And this is about the guest. The guest, this is a gentleman who, this is his first time here on Stories of the Supernatural. His name is Stefan H. Verstappen. He was born in 1957 in Toronto, Canada. He's a writer, a world traveler, an artist, and he's a martial arts expert. He has lived and traveled throughout China and East Asia. While in Asia, he studied Oriental art, culture, and Kung Fu. Verstappen is a master of the Lohan School of Martial Arts and one of the few Westerners to have lived and studied Kung Fu in China. He continues to write, teach, and create public art installations. Help me welcome him today. How are you doing, Stefan?
Oops, I was muted. I'm
Are you
fine.
there? How are you doing?
I'm okay. How you doing?
I knew. I imagined as much. Good, good, good. Um, you, your bio is so short but so interesting. And I'm going to ask, how did you end up exploring the world? Were you always that way, or did what happened that put you on the path of traveling the world?
Well, no, I was always that way. Um,
Really? Okay.
yeah, I try to explain to people because, I refer to myself now after all these years because, the question I hated when I was growing up is, what do you want to be when you grow up? Do you want to be a fire?
Yeah.
Do you want to be a fireman, an astronaut, a scientist? And I said, yeah, all those. and
Which is great.
I want to be everything. I want to experience the whole thing. The thing was, I had what you would call an enlightenment experience, and this is very common for people like me. At an early age, you just have some kind of a realization, and it kind of it affects your life. It changes the course of your life, basically. And when you talk to people that kind of do the stuff that I do, and you ask them what got them on that track, on that path, and they all will tell you the same thing. That something happened. Good friend of mine, I don't know if you know him, Max Egan. He says
I've heard of him.
that when he was like 5 years old, his parents took him out on vacation and out into the countryside. And he says, "Can we live here? Can we live here?" And they said, "No." And he said, "Why not?" He says, "Because we don't own this." And he says, "What do you mean, own it? Who owns the world?" He couldn't process that. And I had a similar experience. I was 12 years old. I was in Eindhoven in Holland, and I was staying with my uncle. I woke up in, like midnight, 1 o'clock, and I snuck out the house. I just, for some reason, I had to go outside and explore. And it was snowing, because this was close to Christmas time, but it was the big, fluffy, flaky, where it's so beautiful, just floating down, big, fluffy snowflakes. And I just wandered throughout the city late at night. It was like abandoned, Holland in those days. Everybody went to bed at 9 o'clock. So I'm all by myself, and I had this whole city to myself. And the overwhelming feeling that came through was, I'm alive. This is it. I have a whole life ahead of me. I was only 12. You have a life ahead of you, and you need to live it. And that was it. So from that point on, I've tried to live my life.
Let me tell you something. That's an incredible realization for a 12-year-old.
Yeah,
That's incredible. Most 12-year-olds are not thinking about that.
yeah, it was.
Thinking about, I'm going to go play with my friend or something. That's incredible.
It's like Gurdjieff would say, it's self-remembering, and well, a lot of mystic teachers would describe a similar experience, where you absolutely realize that you are a living, breathing entity on this planet.
Hmm.
Now, what are you going to do with it? And for me, it was, I want to see everything. I want to go everywhere. I want to do everything. I want to experience everything to the max. And so I've also been blessed with an insane curiosity. So I do like to learn. I enjoy learning. And I'm curious about everything except accounting and politics.
Let me tell you something. That would
Yeah,
have been a bad mix. I'm an
never been
accountant that wants to rove the world.
never been interested in those subjects, but just about everything else: science, art, philosophy, the occult, um, music, astronomy, you name it. I've always been very interested in, and so I've kind of lived my life that way.
How long did it take you to leave home?
Well, I first ran away from home when I was 6. My mother's a psychopath, or was a psychopath. Thank goodness she's dead now, and hopefully in a nice warm place. um,
So, in other words, and this is what, what's incredible is that 12-year-old revelation about yourself and about what you wanted persisted. It stayed with you.
yeah, absolutely. I never forgot it. I'm always trying to recreate the experience, and that's why I spend a lot of time walking alone, usually through the forest or along the lake. But I also like to explore cities too. And cities I prefer bicycle, but and late at night, I'll haunt the city at 2 o'clock in the morning. I'll bicycle downtown and where everybody's gone and the buildings are closed, but I can really explore and not be
Isn't that,
bothered.
aren't you? I'm not going to say, but you know that that's a good way of getting in trouble too, because that's when all the weirdos.
Oh,
Okay, not everybody.
sure,
This
sure,
is sometimes when they come out.
yeah, but
You find yourself in predicaments.
never, never, because first of all, I'm a martial arts expert. I've been doing it now, teaching now for 45 years. 45 years, yeah, yeah. So, I'm not afraid. There's no people that scare me, and but also I'm cunning, and I can adapt to every situation. So if I run into a motorcycle gang, I know how to fit right in with them. If I run into a street gang, I can fit right in. If I'm, with homeless people, I just can fit right in. If I need to go to the bankers society or the bankers club, I can fit right in. Because I'm very adaptable like that, which is a quality of psychopaths, but it's something I learned to do.
Do I still have you there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Oh, okay. It just booted me out. It just, I don't know what it did.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm gonna backpedal a little bit to the point that I asked you, didn't that get you into predicaments because of that you decided that you would wander around town after hours?
Yeah.
Um, but and what happened? Or were you just one of these people that was? Because it sounds like you were very how can I say, observed. You observed also what was going on around you. It seems that way.
Oh, absolutely. Heightened awareness is key to it. But what I was saying, I'm very flexible. I know how to read people, and I know how to adapt to every situation. For example, if I'm going to bicycle downtown, I also use disguises. So if I'm going to bicycle downtown, I will dress like a homeless person, because that way nobody bothers you. It's a great disguise. I'll give you an example. I was going to go down. Are you in Canada? No, you're in Miami, right?
Well, no, I moved to North Florida about a year ago. So yes, but I'm in Florida.
Okay. Well, I want to go see the fireworks at the Canadian National Exhibition. It was like a 30-minute bicycle ride, but because I'm going downtown and I'm going to be there late at night, I dressed in what I call my homeless outfit, which is just raggedy old jacket, raggedy old pants. So I get down there and usually I bring a couple of beers with me, packed and ice, and I'm laying on the grass, waiting for the fireworks display to start. And there was another homeless guy there. And he goes, "Hey, buddy, how you doing?" And I went, "Yeah, fine." He says, "You want a beer?" I had just come back from California at that time. And, Marlene, I got to be honest with you. Of all my friends and family and the people that I knew here in Toronto, this was the only guy that offered to buy me a beer. He had him with him. So,
Really?
Yeah, like I get along with homeless people. I've always tried to help homeless people. I've hired them to help me when I'm doing my art installations, and when I lived in California, I would have them over. There's a few homeless people you get to know because they're always on the same spot on Main Street there, and
Hmm.
I'd invite them over for Thanksgiving dinner, and well, that's just the kind of person I am because a lot of times it's not their fault. A lot of them, yes, are crazy. A lot of them are drug addicts, but a lot of them are just people that have, fallen on hard times. And for the listeners out there,
Yep.
you go a month without an income, and you see how fast your ass
Yeah.
ends up on the street, and it's not your fault.
Yep.
And then, yeah, go and ask your family to help you,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so I thanked him. I said, "No, I brought my own beer." And he came over and sat down, and we watched the fireworks. And he told me all about the best dumpsters to dive and what are the warmest places over the subway grate to sleep at night where you get the hot air coming up.
Yeah.
But I can do that with everybody. I remember I walked into a bar one time. Stupid me. I usually have a rule about know your terrain, right? Know where you're going, know what
Hmm.
the area is. I'm very tactical that way. I walked into this bar. To my horror, it turned out to be a biker strip joint. And just then,
Oh boy.
you know, and I'm coming home from work, and at that time I was working as a publicist, so I'm in a suit and tie and all that. So I'm the guy in the
Oh,
suit and the
you
tie.
fit right in, huh?
Yeah, and in the biker strip bar. So I look out the window because I always sit near the door. Again, it's tactical. I always sit facing the door, right? I never have my back to the door. And I see a stretch limo pull out. And sure enough, here comes the boss of the bikers. He's wearing his colors. I think they were Hell's Angels, and three strippers with him, and he comes walking into the bar, and son of a bitch, the guy sits down right next to me, and I'm thinking, oh my God. So I turned to him, and I said, how long have you been studying karate? And he said, what? I said, how long have you been studying karate? He said, how did you know I was studying karate? I said, I can tell by the way you walk. Blew the guy's mind. He just, what the? And then, I told him, I'd spent years in China studying Kung Fu. I can tell. Well, my God, he became my best friend. All the drinks were on the house, and, arm around me, and he's calling the other strippers over. This guy is a master. He could tell just by the way I moved that I had invitations to go in the limo and snort some coke and go with the strippers and all that. So what I mean to say is I know how to fit in, right?
But
And
you know what? Lady Luck was on your side because thank God he was studying karate.
yeah, but I could
Maybe-
tell he was, right? So
No, but I'm saying,
yeah,
if what if he hadn't? And
well,
here you would have been like,
I would have figured something else out. Because it's intuition that does it, right? Like when I tell
sure.
people about this, I said, I can't think this out, but it's intuition. Like the time when I'm traveling through the jungles, right on the border between Thailand and Laos,
Hmm.
and well, I had a lot of marijuana on me, which you think it's legal over there. Think again, they catch you. It's 10 years in the Bangkok Hilton, right? You've seen all.
Really?
Oh yeah, you've seen all the movies. So, but we were way out in the jungle. I wasn't worried. We were so far from any civilization, and son of a bitch, suddenly out of the jungle come 8 guys in army drag carrying machine guns.
Oh,
And we were traveling in a tuk-tuk at the time, which is a Nissan 4x4, but the back seat is converted to, they put a couple of benches down, and so it was me, my buddy, and 4 Thai women that were coming back from groceries. And so they come out and they start going through the baggage, our luggage, right? I have my marijuana in my bag. I only carried a carry-on bag, and for sure they're going to find it. And me and my buddy, we're shitting ourselves. And you know how it's hot there in Thailand, the humidity and everything. We're sitting there in the back. When the tuk-tuk was moving, it was nice and cool. And now it stopped, and then the heat comes in, so we're sweating and we're worried. And now the guys, suddenly the soldiers started making a big fuss as they were going through my bag. There was a commotion, yelling going on, and they all backed away from my bag, like there was something dangerous in it. And what they had found was my expandable baton, which I had bought in Hong Kong. This was like a steel baton. You press a button, it's spring loaded, and ka-chunk, it expands into an 18-inch steel weapon. Right?
Okay.
They thought it was a grenade. They hadn't seen anything like it.
Oh my God.
Well, because that's why they all backed away. They all made a big circle.
Oh yeah, for a minute that was like, wow, they're really impressed by a baton. So they're thinking this is an explosive.
Yeah, like a pipe bomb or a grenade. They've never seen anything like it, so they're all freaking out there. And again, this is all instinct. So I went into what we call playing the fool. It's a strategy. It's a very good strategy. If you're in real danger, it's called feigned madness or playing the fool. And so I got out of the tuk-tuk, and we had hired a guide, Utai, to lead us into, because we were looking for a shaman, one of the Karen shaman up in Laos. And we'd hired this guy to take us way up into these remote villages, and Utai saying, "Don't get out of the car, don't get out, whatever you do, don't get out." No. I jumped out, put my hands up in the air, and suddenly, 8 machine guns raised up and point towards me, right? I startled them, right? I said, "No, it's not a bomb. Let me show you." And I went over and I picked it up, and I showed it to everybody. And then I pushed the button, and it went ka-chunk. And I handed it to him. I said, "Here, you take a look. You can see." And they passed it around, and suddenly one of the guys in perfect English, said to me, "Why do you have this?" And I said, "Well, we were warned that if we came up into this area, there were a lot of bandits," which is true. It's a wild west up there, right? And I brought it for protection. He translated it to all the other soldiers. Well, they started laughing their asses off.
They're thinking you're trying. Okay.
Yeah. Well, later on, I found out once we got up into the mountains there, everybody had a machine gun.
Right, I was going to say, it was like, yeah, good luck on that. And let me ask you, were those soldiers, were they looking for drugs, or were they just randomly stopping?
No, they were looking for drugs. It was Thai Border Patrol. No insignia, so you couldn't tell who they were. If you'd seen not the last one, but the second last Rambo movie where he's in Burma, that's basically where we were, Okay. So for me to have a baton, it was really ridiculous, and proved that I was not a drug dealer, because no drug dealer would be that stupid.
Right, okay.
Right.
So, I'm telling you, that's incredible. That's an incredible story.
So they stopped looking. They just turned to me and they said, "Okay, put your stuff back in the bag, go on your way." But they thought it was a big joke. But instinctively I knew this was the opportunity to distract them away from continuing to search my bag. So that's what I mean. I would have thought of something, but I've always been that way, Marlene. I've got good instincts, okay? So if something happens, I don't know what I'm going to do. I can't tell you in advance. I couldn't even plan it out. If you told me, well, if they pull you over, what do you think you would do? Well, I can't tell you what I would do.
So you're really good at ad-libbing. You're like, here it is.
Yeah, well, it takes over me. It takes over me. There's no thinking involved. You just act.
Yeah, you're like, you just make what it is at that moment, and how can you anticipate the moment until it arrives?
Yes, and this is how you fight as well. This is the highest form of hand-to-hand combat. I have a good friend. He's he's retired now, but he was the first team captain for Toronto's very first SWAT team. And so he trained at my club. And great guy. And then he went on to teach at the police academy, close quarters combat. And we were talking one time, and he says, "You know what question I get all the time?" I said, "What?" He says, "What would you do if a guy came at you with a knife like this, and he said, I'm going to ask you that question, what would you do? And I said, what would I do? I don't know. I'll know if it happens. No, because you have to react instinctively.
Right.
You know, you can't plan this out. In hand-to-hand combat, things go so fast. So you can't say to yourself, oh, well, if he attacks me with a knife, I will do a low cross lock, and then I'll do a wrist lock, and then I'll hit him in the head. If you think like that, you're dead. You have to react to the situation. And this is how I taught my students, and the best fighters are like that. And so I told him that, and I said, so what did you say? And he said, I said the same thing. I don't know what I'm going to do. He'd have to come at me, and then I will react. But I cannot tell you in advance what technique. I mean, we learn, okay, knife defense, defense against this, defense against that. Yeah, you learn that, you train in that. But in a real life situation, you cannot think your way through it. You have to react. I'll give you one more example about instinct. Because people make the mistake in thinking that the words they hear in their head, that's them. It's not you. It's internal dialogue. Are you familiar? You're familiar with the concept, right?
Yes, yes, I am.
Your internal dialogue is not you. And we hear a lot of talk about, being authentic and this and that. You cannot be authentic with internal dialogue. These are tape loops that you've picked up over your lifetime, TV, television, something you heard your parents or your teachers say. It's not you. If you want to be authentic, you have to react with the world through what I would call your being. Kirchhoff calls that as well, your being. Not your intellectual center, not your internal dialogue. You need to react through your being. And so here's another example of my instinct kicking in. It's New Year's Eve. We're going home on the streetcar. Me and my two buddies. We're at the back of the streetcar. We'd smoked a lot of pot, and in those days I got a little bit paranoid from smoking too much pot. You know how it is. And this girl gets on the streetcar. She was obviously coming back from a party. She was nicely dressed, but she was kind of like covered with mud. So she had either fallen down, because this was wintertime, you know, in Toronto it's snow and the gutters are full of mush and things like that, or, you know, a car had splashed her or something like that. But she was hammered. And she's walking down the streetcar towards the back. She came in at the front, and she would turn to the people she passed, and she would say, "What the F are you looking at? You effing fag. What the F are you looking at? And you son of a bitch, mind your own effing business. What the F are you looking at?" And so every person that she passed, she would turn to them and, you know, swear and cuss them out. And in the background, you heard murmurs, "Oh, F you, bitch," you know, this. Now she's heading right towards me, straight towards me, right? So I know she's going to come up to me, and it's going to be the same thing. "What the F are you looking at, you f***it?" And so I'm running through all my replies mentally, right? The internal dialogue. I can be witty when I want to be, so I'm running through all these replies, right? You know, yeah, you too, B, and, you know, swear at her or get offended or something like that. But by the time she got to the front of me, I couldn't decide on a single reply. I couldn't decide on it. And so now she's standing in front of me in a real cocky attitude. She's tilting her head. "What are you looking at?" Now, I acted purely out of instinct, and I wouldn't do that today because I would be arrested for assault, no doubt. But I'd noticed that she had mud on her cheek. So I slowly reached up with my hand, and with my thumb, I cleaned the mud off her cheek, and then I put my hand back down. Well, all the anger immediately left her. You could see her shoulders sag, and she let out a big sigh, and she started to tear up, and then she turned around and walked away, never said anything to me. Now, in hindsight, now that I'm mature, because back then I was a young guy, you know, But in hindsight, I know she was suffering. The reason she was yelling at everybody was because she wanted people to hate her, right? Because she was punishing herself. It was psychology. So she was living off the animosity of people that she would inflict on purpose. Who knows what happened? Maybe her boyfriend dumped her or something like that, and she got drunk. She fell in the mud. She's covered in mud, and so she hates herself, and she wants to, draw that kind of hatred towards it. Now, looking back on it, that's what I would think, but I couldn't think that at the time, and I don't know what possessed me to do that. I just noticed she had mud on her face, and I cleaned it up, and immediately her demeanor changed. All the tension went out of her shoulders, right? The fighting stance, the defiance, all of that left her instantly. So that's instinct.
Yes.
Now, when I did that, I was being authentic. I was acting from my being. It wasn't me going, oh, how can I take control of this situation? How can I manipulate this girl? I should show her kindness because then I'll diffuse her. None of that stuff, right? So that's what I'm talking about by instinct. And I try to teach that to my students, especially for fighting. You need to be able to move instinctively. Somebody throws a punch at you, you dodge it without even thinking about it. To do that, you need to have awareness. You need to diffuse your focus. There's a way of focusing your eyes that will help the instinct, so you don't focus on details. Remember those printouts? This goes back maybe 20 years. They were like digital printouts, but if you look at them in a certain way, they become a 3D picture.
Yes.
Okay? That's how you have to look at life. It's what I call diffused focus. It's like a gestalt. You take in the whole picture. You don't focus on the details. You don't get lost in details. You see everything around you. And that seems to stop the internal dialogue. And then you can react instinctively. And when you react instinctively, you're reacting from your being. And now you're being authentic. I'm reacting from my heart and from my belly.
Not overthinking it.
Not overthinking it.
And you know what? I imagine for your opponent, it kind of throws them off because they don't know what to expect from you either. Because you're just standing there. It's like, okay, what's he gonna do? So it's like that's a real good head game there.
Well, it works that way too. But you're right. They don't know what to make of me. They really don't.
Right.
No, but listen, it's a cheap trick because I know distance. If you're further than 6 feet away from me, you can't hit me. So even though a lot of times they'll throw a kick, I already know it's not going to reach me. You're 6 feet away. You don't have 6 foot long legs. You have 4 foot long legs. So kick all you want, punch all you want. I'm just going to stand there. I don't have to block or do anything because I already know you're too far away to hit me. If they were to come in close enough to actually hit me, okay, maybe then I'm going to start blocking. But up until that point, I don't have to do anything. But you have to have a good sense of spatial relationships, your 3D space around you, and until they get into my what I call critical range, they'll kick the air.
And it's right because because you know, like you said, your understanding of how close does this person have to be to me to either reach me with their leg or their foot from where they're at.
That's right.
Most people are not that quick on the draw for that.
Well, it comes from years and years of training and understanding the distance. You get to learn how to. I mean, it got to the point where people would never come within critical range of me. I'm spooking them out. Sometimes I would do a really sneaky trick, like I would pretend I was distracted. I would suddenly look down like my shoelace was untied, hoping that they would take advantage of that, right?
Right. Yeah, come on in for the kill.
Come on in for the kill. I'm distracted, knowing that I'm doing that on purpose. And again, it's a classic military strategy. It's called the strategy of open city gates.
Okay.
It's in my book, The 36 Strategies, the strategy of open gates, where you leave yourself seemingly, purposely vulnerable. And what it does is it spooks your opponent. They're going, how come they haven't closed the city gates? Don't they see there's an army arrayed in front of them? It must be a trap.
Right, exactly. And I imagine, not that I'm a fighter because I'm not, I'm not. A lot of warfare, whether it's one-on-one or other numbers, a lot of it has to be psychological.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, the
um,
greatest strategist is Sun Tzu in his book, The Art of War.
hmm
And he says you have to defeat your enemy before you go into battle.
right.
So a lot of that is you defeat them psychologically. That's the point. And if you defeated them psychologically, you've already won.
Ex- Now, let me ask you, what happens when you have an opponent? I imagine up to a certain point, it's when you know something about your opponent. What is it when you're facing an opponent that you have no knowledge about?
It's basically just reading their body language.
Okay.
Because I had an open door policy when I taught, and I taught for like 40 years, and one of the few clubs that had this open door policy, and that was anybody that wants to come and spar me is welcome. I'll take you
Okay.
all on, anybody. So I would get people from taekwondo and karate and jiu-jitsu and krav maga and mixed martial arts, and I said, come on, let's go, which was good because I had a chance to defend against all these different styles. And it's basically experience. I'm probably sparred 10,000 people in my life, but you do that long enough, and you get good at it. It's like anything. If you do anything 10,000 times, there's an old saying in Chinese martial arts: everything is 10,000 hours away from perfection.
Let me ask. What I'm going to ask you because for my listeners, which are not, what happens? Because, like you said, this is a setting where you said you would welcome all comers,
Yeah.
regardless, whatever their school of fighting was. But what about the person? What if you're on the street? In other words, in a situation where you're not anticipating that somebody might attack you for whatever the reason. Okay.
Yeah, I've only
How would
had
you handle something like that?
well, again, you're asking me that question, which the answer is I don't know until it happens.
Yeah, okay, I know. All right.
you know,
What would you? Because sometimes, you hear a lot about, um, and exactly like you said, people will sometimes think, well, if that happens, I'm going to do this. I'm going to pull out a gun, or I'm going to put out a taser, or I'm going to put out a
right,
this, or my
right,
pepper spray, or you do all these scenarios in your head, okay,
yeah,
until or I'll pull out my phone and I'll shine the light in their eyes, something along those lines.
sure. Now, if you practice doing that 1,000
Uh huh.
times, then you'll be okay. But just thinking about doing that's not going to really help. You'd have to actually practice doing it. There's
Okay, there you go.
there's a
Okay,
couple of other strategies I use, and again, it
okay,
depends on the situation. Like I said, when I go downtown bicycling, and I've bicycled everywhere, all the ghettos in the U.S. there, Oakland and in L.A., I've been, going through some bad neighborhoods there, but I play the gray man. Have you heard of that
okay.
expression?
Yes, I have.
Okay, so I
You
play
just
the gray man.
fade into the background.
I
Okay.
just fade. They don't even notice me. They don't know I'm there.
Hmm.
So I call it my cloak of invisibility.
Yes.
And but there's other situations where I'll do the opposite. And are you familiar? I'm sure you're familiar with the term ki or chi.
Yes.
Right. So I can, and I know this sounds, kind of artsy, well, new agey or whatever, or
Go ahead.
something you see from a kung fu movie, but there's a way of expanding your chi.
Okay.
Okay. So now I project confidence and energy, and you know what? People part like Moses and the Red Sea. They back up. So I can walk down the street like a rummy neighborhood,
Hmm.
with a lot of crackheads and all that. And normally I would use the gray man tactic for that.
Okay.
But if they were looking to me toward like, well, even though this guy's probably nobody, maybe we should check him out. then
Right.
I'll expand my chi, and
All
they
right.
sense it on another level.
Hmm.
It's subconscious on their part, but they sense that I am not to be fucked with.
We will let him pass.
Best to let
Yes,
this
just
one
like
go
keep on
by.
going. Yeah. Right.
So these are all different strategies. Sometimes it goes this way, sometimes it goes that way. Uh, Three guys tried to intimidate me. They were going to rob me.
Okay.
So this was late at night, at 2 o'clock in the morning. I like to sit out by the lake and have a beer and a joint and contemplate the moon, and I go out there late at night because there's nobody around. I don't want to be disturbed. And son of a bitch, three guys, minorities, come walking down the path, and they come up to me and they go, "Yo mofo, yo mf'er, yo mofo, give us a smoke." And I said, "No."
It's like I don't want to be friends, right?
I'm not your friend. What? But you got a pack of cigarettes right there, because I had my beer and a pack of cigarettes right on the bench next to me. I said, "Yeah, those are mine."
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna mess you up. We're gonna take that. We're gonna take your bike, and we're gonna take that. And I said, "Okay, come on." And I'm just sitting there. I didn't stand up and assume a karate pose. All right. I'm just leaning back. My legs are crossed. I'm very relaxed. And I said, "You want it? Come and take it. Come on. Come and take it." And there was 3 against 1. They backed off, okay? They weren't
Oh,
coming,
I
and
bet they must have.
because, well, because
They
again, I'm not, you don't
you
show
wigged
them,
them out.
fear, right? Because if
Right.
you show any kind of fear, and even assuming a karate pose, that would be like, "Oh, you're nervous. Now you're going to go into your karate." And
Right.
but I knew I could take them anyways. I didn't have to stand up. I could take them just sitting down. There's techniques that you can use. You kick out their knees, right? When they get close enough, there's nothing they can do.
Oh,
They can't even hit you. You
that
can,
sounds very painful.
yeah, you can take out their knees before they get anywhere close to you. So actually, I'm in a good position. It's one of the techniques I teach women in women's self-defense. If you want to fight a guy off, you drop to the ground, get on your butt, use your hands to pivot around, and you keep your legs facing the attacker. There's no way he can run around behind you, because you can pivot
Hmm.
faster than anybody can run around you. Okay, so
All right.
you keep your legs towards them, and as soon as they get close, you kick out their knees. Now they can't kick you because you're on the ground. They can't punch you because you're out of reach. In order for them to be able to hit you in any way, you'll be able to take out their knees first. So,
Wow. And that let me tell you something. An injury to the knee. Ooh,
oh yeah, yeah, that's
that's
all you
coming.
need to do. Once you dislocate a kneecap, they're not going anywhere. So I just laid there. But again, now the thing in my mind is, how am I going to dispose of their bodies?
Oh God. It's like okay.
That's what I was
I,
thinking of. I'm going to dump them in the lake, but I have to make it look like an accident. So maybe I'll smash their heads in on the curb, and it'll look like they slipped and fell and hit
slipped and all three fell in at the
and all
same
three
time.
fell in.
Do you think that
But
they thought that you had a firearm or what?
no, I'm in Canada.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Nobody's
Oops.
allowed to carry a
All right.
firearm.
Okay. So they didn't have to worry about that.
They
Okay.
didn't have to worry about that. But again,
Okay.
it's the attitude, it's the chi, right?
Right.
Because,
Okay.
like I said, normally I would just fade in, but they were pissing me off. You're interfering with my meditation time. I don't
Right.
need you clowns running up down and of course they're loud. These guys are always loud. They're always yelling and screaming. And, Sun Tzu says that too. Men that yell at night are afraid. That's why they yell. So if you're very quiet and you stick to the shadows, you spook people out.
Sure. Yeah. Tell me. Tell me how angry you are, and I'll tell you how scared you are.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's really all it
That's
is.
all it is.
But
So
so they there was something about it. They were like, you know what? This is you got in their head.
oh yeah. So what you were talking about, so the psychology of it, right? So I'm doing the opposite of what most people would expect to do, or they're searching for their pepper spray or whatever. But again, I'm trained, so I'm not really worried about them. I know how to fight against three people at the same time because we practice that. I used to do that with my students. I'd say, okay, you three guys, go get that guy. And they go, what? Three against one? I said, yeah, what do you think's going to happen on the street? It's going to be a fair fight. It's never a fair fight on the street. You better get used to having 2, 3 guys coming at you. And the technique is to always move laterally. You move in a circle because that way they always have to realign and so that they're coming at you one at a time. They can't flank you. They can't get around behind you. So long as they're coming at you one at a time, you can take them down. I know I'm getting way off.
No. This is so interesting, but I'm going to ask you
Yeah.
a question again from a non-fighter. Is there any time that you would say you need to run?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Now, I've never experienced that time, but I would say yes, yeah. But again, and this is what I talk about with people, and also, I do a lot of work on prepping and survivalism. I do consultations if people want to get ready and get prepped. I just had a consultation this afternoon with a man in Amityville, Long Island. A very nice gentleman, and
Yes.
what I tell people, because people are worried about things are getting really bad now, okay? We're looking at food shortages. We're looking at potential
Yes.
World War III, for God's sake. The lunatics.
Let me tell you, you know, I tell everybody, if somebody would tell me December of 2019,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and I'm going to say that date stands out for me because my mom passed away in December 28th of 2019. She was 90 years old. It was very sad, but she was it was not totally unexpected. But what I'm saying is
It's
that
good that
date,
she's
that
gone now, that she
month
doesn't
stands
have to
out for
live
me.
through this. That she doesn't
Right.
have
As
to
a matter of
see
fact,
this.
later on, with what came afterwards,
Yeah.
I was like, sometimes the timing on these things are better that you don't realize at that moment.
Yep.
Because I had her in a nursing home and everything, and I'm the only child and whatever. But what I'm saying is, to me, that's how BC, AD before Christ and whatever AD Anno Domini. Well,
Yeah.
that was my cutoff point. I said, if at that moment somebody would have said what was going to come, starting in the spring of 2020,
Yep. You
and
never
everything
would've
that
believed-
came after it, I would have said, "Oh, you're crazy."
Yeah.
No, that's not. No, people do that. No, and saying it's okay. No.
Yeah.
And wow.
Yeah. I know. Look at what happened
Wow.
in 2 years.
Uh-huh.
All our freedoms are gone.
In 2 years. So anything that you say, which would have sounded far-fetched back in December of 2019, unfortunately, now is very, very likely.
Yeah.
And it's
So-
unfortunate to think that.
And so people are rushing now to buy food and buy guns and get ready and fortify their home. But what I tell people, in a survival situation, the key, the most important weapon you have is your mind, your instincts, your ability to react, to read a situation. And again, it's being cunning. And if you are cunning, you can survive anything. You can survive these attacks. You can survive muggings. You can survive people wanting to fight you or people wanting to break into your house. It's difficult to teach cunning. I did a lot of research when I wrote my first book, The 36 Strategy. I spent a lot of time researching, and this research will tie into what we're going to talk about later with psychopaths. But I read military history, all the wars and the battles and the lives of the kings and emperors and shoguns and boy, these were ruthless people.
Yes, they
And
were.
and the strategies were they were cunning and ruthless. And then you start to get a feel for it. So you need to read a lot of history, a lot of examples. I also read lots of books on con artists, how they perform their cons and tricks, 3-card Monte and soap, the dollar and the soap business and the phony gold mine. I read all about Ponzi and all these con artists, how they fooled people. So you get a sense of street smarts and you get a sense of how cunning people are, then you need to match that level of cunning. At least you need to be able to recognize what you're dealing with. And so long as you're cunning enough and ruthless, and people always think when I say ruthless, I mean like you got to be mean. No, you got to be ruthless in that, somebody comes up to you on the street and says, hey, can you give me a light for my cigarette? Look, that's a setup for a mugging. Everybody knows that, right? But a lot of people, especially Canadians, oh, sure, I think I got a match in my pocket. Hold on a second. No, some stranger comes up to you on the street and asks for your light. You say, I don't have one. And then you step around them, right? And you step around them sideways because you want to be able to see who's behind you. Because 9 times out of 10, there'll be somebody behind you.
Do you think that, and I hate to say it, but do you think that a lot of modern, when I say modern living, let's go for the last 50, 60, 70 years, they've kind of dulled that instinct for self-preservation? Because basically that's really what it boils down to. Self-preservation.
Yeah.
For yourself, for your family, for your children, for whatever.
Yeah.
In other words, it's been dulled because they've put adjectives, ugly ones, like you're ruthless, you're this, you're that, you're suspicious, you're paranoid.
Yeah.
When people would normally say, why are you coming in so close to my body space? Like you said,
Exactly.
you're asking for a light.
Yeah.
Where people now, like you said, are like, want to be Mr. or Mrs. Friendly. Yeah, sure, here. Where once upon a time, maybe 100 years back or 80 years back, they would have been like at the moment very wary, or not let that individual get close to them.
Yeah.
So it's
then
almost
again,
like we've been defanged.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, Marlene. Listen, Charlotte Iserby, I'm sure you're familiar with her work, The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America.
I've heard of her. I am not familiar with her work per se. I have not.
Well, she made a very good case that the educational system has been purposely creating very stupid people. And this has been going on, like you said, 50 years? Yeah, 50 years at least. Also, the powers that rule this world, the evil, dark psychopaths that rule this world, they don't want people to be like me. They hate people like me, that you're self-reliant, you can handle yourself, you don't get tricked, you're not fooled by propaganda or con artist tricks, you can't be distracted, and you're willing to stand your ground against injustice. Oh my God, I'm their worst nightmare. And as a result of that, they have done everything in their power. That's why we have, this whole war against masculinity. Oh, it's toxic masculinity. Oh my God. And boys can't be men and they can't participate. Well, that's to kill that instinct. That's to kill the ability to think for yourself and react and stand up for what's right. And they do that on purpose, and they have bred. The last couple of generations, I don't want to generalize. There's a lot of good millennials and Zoomers and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of good people out there, but the vast majority have no clue anymore. They don't know how to build a fire, how to change a tire.
Let me tell you something. And I know that changing a tire is more complicated nowadays than it was once upon a time.
Yeah.
But, in other words, sometimes it's not like before, like where you would just, jack up the car and undo sometimes they hide the tire somewhere in the body of the car. I get it.
Yeah.
But like you said, something where before 80 or 90% of men would know how to do that.
Yes.
Among other simple tasks.
Yes.
They don't. They have no idea. They're like, and the reason why I know this is once upon a time I used to dispatch for the state troopers.
Oh, okay, so
Florida.
Yeah.
And, we would get a lot of calls for, people stuck on the highway.
Mm-hmm.
And they also had something called the Road Rangers.
Yeah.
Which is, because once upon a time in a galaxy far, far away, the troopers would actually change your tires for you. But this was many, many, many years ago.
Yeah.
But now they have these road rangers, which they go and, if you need a tire change or you run out of gas, they at least get you off the highway or give you a gallon of gas, whatever.
Right.
Bottom line, though, I would get all these calls for men, okay, who, it's not that they didn't have a spare tire. you know,
They didn't know
they
where it
just
was.
they had no clue, none,
Hmm.
and this was a lot of them. So when you say that, I understand firsthand how accurate that was.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I don't know. I think of my uncle and my grandfather and things like this that they knew how to do stuff. You know, they at
Exactly.
least they knew how to build stuff. Kind of. I'm not going to tell you they were architects or builders. You know, I had one uncle that that he was in construction, but they they had this thing where they tried to figure stuff out.
Yes, they could
And
figure it
basic
out.
stuff around the house, they would do it. And nowadays, they're like, yeah, they'd be like, unless it was like something like they'd say, okay, this is, this is not a, but no, and nowadays that's gone by the wayside.
Yeah, and
That has gone by the
that's on
wayside.
purpose. That's
Um,
to create a docile,
yes,
weak population that is easily manipulated, and that's what you see now.
yes.
Yeah.
I think that's why handymen make a lot of money sometimes.
Oh, sure, it's a great profession.
It's,
Forget about a
yeah,
degree in psychology.
yeah,
That's
even some of
useless. You'll
them.
never make money at that. But know
No,
how
become a
to
handyman.
know how to unplug a sink or you know.
Yes. I know, and I know that to maybe to some people that might think, well, it's not that important, but at the basis of it, of all the problems that come with it, of what you said, whether it's the way that the indoctrination
Hmm.
of men, what's the God, that they've thrown the thing up at manhood as misogyny.
Yeah,
The chauvinist. Remember when there was in the
yeah,
80s a chauvinist? That was like one of the terms,
yeah,
and all these things. And of course they always use the worst case scenarios as an example. You see what I'm saying?
yeah. Okay, so yeah, there
Um,
are some bad
oh,
examples,
of course there is.
but I'll
But
be
that's the case
honest.
with everything in life. It's like,
Yeah, but in my 65 years on this planet, the number of men that were predators or were obnoxious, oh, less than a handful my whole life.
yeah,
Most men I
yes,
know, they want to be good men, they want to help. They're not interested in dominating women or
yes,
any of that stuff. They're just regular guys. They want to earn a living. They want to come home, have a beer and a hamburger, and watch the football game. And I hate sports myself, professional sports. I never watch that crap. But anyways, good for them.
yeah.
They're not hurting anybody. They just want to be
Let me tell
left
you.
alone.
Well, my family is Cuban. I was born in Miami, but my family is from Cuba. They're Hispanics, so I know a lot of people have that
Oh, our prime
stereotypes about
minister is
Hispanics
Cuban.
and Cubans. Really? Oh, please. Yes, of course he is.
Yeah, he's
Yes, I
Fidel
know. Yeah,
Castro's.
he comes from that Castro lineage. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's do a
Oh, he
DNA
does.
test on him. Let's send him to ancestry.com and see what comes back.
Yeah, I'd like to.
Oh,
Eh?
but anyway, Cubans get that, even though, and same thing, even though the Hispanics and yes, the macho man mentality and stuff, even though they've calmed down, I didn't grow up where men were exactly like what you were saying.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We're trying to like, hey, be, misogynists or anything. And I, I grew up surrounded by men, family members.
Yeah.
Did you know what? It may be their portrayal, but within their family, let me tell you, my experience was that they were very good men. They took care of their families. They were responsible.
Exactly, exactly.
Nobody ever got abused or hit or anything. Nothing.
Yeah,
It was a very normal upbringing. And my point being that even coming from like what you were saying earlier, even coming from a culture, I'm not saying it's not flawless. No, no, believe me, there was some that you'd be like,
sure.
"Oy." But I I never saw or experienced anything like that. That existed, of course it did.
Yeah,
Of course it did.
exists in every
But
culture.
like what you were saying, when you make it look like everybody's like that,
Yeah,
or every man is like that,
yeah,
and unfortunately, that mentality it's inculcated over several years,
yeah,
lots of years, as a matter of fact.
yeah, yeah.
And then
Well,
you come out with what we have now, which is the helpless. Some men want to be. It's more important to be nice
yeah,
or good guy,
yeah,
than be effective. I hate to say it,
yeah.
but
I'll give you an example
that's.
of
Go ahead.
toxic masculinity. I was coming home one night and I was at the subway station. It was probably like 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. There was me and 6 women standing on the platform, and the women were spread out over 50 yards, right, and me at one end. And well, the subway train was late. It didn't come, and then it's supposed to come every 8 minutes. 8 minutes go by, 16 minutes go by, 24 minutes go by, 31 minutes go by. No subway, and there's nobody there. It was like a Outer Limits, not Outer Limits, the Twilight Zone. It's like a
Okay.
Twilight Zone episode. And then the lights would go on and off, and you'd hear strange noises down the tunnel. Well, this went on for an hour and a half. We didn't hear any announcements. Nothing was going on. It was like a horror movie. Suddenly the world is empty. The trains aren't running, and there's nobody around, and there's no announcements. Well, after an hour and a half, all 6 women were within 3 feet of me.
I bet. I bet. Of
They
course. At the
slowly.
beginning, they were standing down the platform, and little by little, it shrunk.
Exactly. It was like little by little, like because the longer it took for the train to arrive, the more nervous. I mean, I was getting a
Oh,
little
of
bit.
course, they're thinking. Yeah, everybody' imagination goes off into
Yeah.
worst case scenario.
Alien invasion. It's finally happened, and
Whatever. It's like, okay, just in case. He's
yeah.
gonna-
And so, even though they started off a long way away from me, but slowly they kind of,
Yes.
nonchalantly, kind of wandered around. But every time they wandered around, it was
Yes.
another 2 feet closer until I had all 6 women standing within 6 feet of me, okay? So that's your toxic masculinity, okay? Because,
Yes.
and again, it's what I talked about earlier about the chi. I do use the chi, but it's a calming effect on people. People know that I'm strong and gentle, and that's very comforting to be around. And you know yourself, if you were, it was a stormy night, and the lights went out, and the windows were rattling, and lightning bolts were striking around the house, and you had a strong, quiet, gentle man, you would feel a lot better, right?
Sure, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah.
Especially if I hear a noise outside.
Yeah. So that's what it is,
No.
So
It's like, yeah, of course, of course. It's one of these things that um, it goes without saying, where you always want to how can I say, especially in situations like that, because sometimes your imagination goes into,
Sure.
the dark places
yeah, yeah,
or anything, or of course, absolutely, you want to feel like, okay, it's even though sometimes instead of this person coming looking to you for you to be the one, unless it's a child, of course, that's different.
yeah,
Okay, for you to be the one with the solutions, or that you have that as an adult woman to go to.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Of
And,
course.
I'm a,
That goes without
a
saying.
rugged-looking guy,
goes
so
without
I don't
saying.
look like a wimp, and I'm very calm all the time. I'm a stoic. You can't piss me off. You can't. Well, other than the government, which pisses me off all the time. But you can come up to me, call me names and all that. I don't care. I'm not gonna rise up to that stuff. So
Well, you know what? One of the things that you were discussing about what you were talking about earlier about what seems to be brewing around us,
hmm
okay, regardless of where you live at, whether it's the U.S. or Canada or anywhere. I think for the first time, a lot of people that normally wouldn't pay attention to this are paying attention.
hmm
Um, because, for lack of a better word, they had their head stuck in the sand.
Yes, absolutely.
They were lazy.
Yeah.
How's that? Lazy. It's like
And
whatever.
scared.
Um, and scared. Well,
Yeah.
now they're scared, but I hate to say it, but a lot of what's happened, we have no one else to blame but ourselves.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Okay, it's
Yeah.
but here we are. In other words, okay, here we are. Whatever. Um, and there's people that, and I'm sure there's some people that are still like out there, like thinking, the aliens are going to land and save us or something like that.
uh-huh.
But I'm sure you know that there's some out there that think that that have it scares them to be responsible for themselves and for their safety.
Yeah. It's easy to blame people for that, but I'll be honest with you, I'm very forgiving about that because I know the reason they are like that is because they went to public school and because they watched television and because they went to college. That's why they're like that. They've been programmed that way. They had no idea. Nobody warned them that they were going to be programmed into being terrified little ninnies. And that's what the result. So it's easy to say, yeah, look, they're afraid and they're stupid and they're not awake and all. Yeah, it's true. They are like that. But ultimately, the responsibility is the people that run this world. Listen, if I was in charge of the education system, I would design programs where, all the men that came out of college would be confident and strong and caring and kind and have skills and not be intimidated by things and self-reliant and work it out yourself. If I was in charge of running education.
Well, the thing is it's once upon a time. I mean, I went through 12 years of Catholic school.
Ooh.
Yeah. I went through that, but the how can I say it? Once upon a time, because I had friends that were in public school, and you had, especially, they had woodworking, they had different programs, and back then they didn't assume that you wanted to go off to college.
Right.
There were trade schools. There were options.
Yeah.
For especially men.
Yeah.
To go into, and go for it. You had options depending on what you like to do or what your aspirations were.
Yeah.
And all of that has disappeared.
Yeah.
All of that.
Yeah.
Has disappeared.
No, when I grew up, that was the options we had too.
Where before you could apprentice for whatever the trade was.
Yeah.
People, and I'm gonna put in my because I moved up from Miami about a year ago, and through the years, a lot of Cubans have ended up in Miami.
Sure.
And a lot of what they call the rafters.
Mm-hmm.
And my point being, a lot of these people were born in and raised under communist rule in Cuba.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And you want me to tell you what that myth? It's not a myth. I know some people are going to upset that they say, "Oh, follow your passion; it'll make you money."
Right.
They don't. When they land in Miami, you know what they all do?
No.
They either set up a small business.
Yeah.
Or they go study how to fix air conditioners.
Yeah.
Or they become phlebotomists.
Yeah.
Or anything that's short term, plus studying English, that will get them money.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
They're out there hustling from the moment they put their foot and start trying to find ways of getting into some type of trade or field.
Yeah.
That doesn't require 4 or 6 years to get a diploma.
Yeah.
You understand?
Oh, yeah.
And even the ones that have some degree, they still have to apprentice and they'll do other things. But they're out there from the beginning learning what a lot of people don't want to do because, hey, why should I be a phlebotomist if I really want to become a doctor? There's nothing wrong with that. Don't get me wrong. But they're always looking in, how do I make money?
Yeah.
So that, and then you meet them 5 years later and they own a house, a little house.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
And they've got their car.
Yeah.
And they're making their way.
And they got their family, and there's food on the table, and
there's food on the table, and there's and maybe at the beginning 2 years later they had a little kind of like little car that was old and beat up.
Right.
Then 3 years later they trade that in, but from the beginning, in other words, they didn't look at it as what am I going to do that makes me happy and fulfilled. I know there's a lot of people out there going, Marlene, what are you saying?
Yeah.
They're out there to make money and survive, and then eventually maybe get into a field they like. But I think a lot of the college crowd, recent ones, they kind of missed that boat.
Yeah.
It's like, go out there and hustle and make money, and and of course, now there's a bunch of them running around with this huge financial debt because of their student loans.
Yeah.
All right, because of that.
Yeah.
And what was it? Or was it pursuing their degree in gender studies? Which turns out to be as useful as if you had a degree in macrame.
Yeah.
But things like this, and here we are. But here we are. We could say discuss all the reasons why
Hmm.
we are where we are with our millennials or whatever, and why a lot of them are wigged out,
Yeah. Yeah.
and some of them are finally paying attention. And one of the things I wanted to talk about, among other things, is that you detailed the how can I say the behaviors that you see with people that are psychopaths.
Right.
And the reason why I bring this up, and I mentioned it earlier before we started recording, is I think a lot of people are surprised to see how many psychopaths are actually running around
Yeah.
and hold important positions.
Yes.
All right, and many make the mistake of thinking psychopath as in Dexter. It's a guy running around killing people.
Hmm.
Yes, there's some of those, but not all are serial killers. As a matter of fact, a lot of them are not serial killers,
Yeah.
and they know how to behave certain ways in society to get away with it. But if you could talk about that, Stefan, as far as what are the how you could tell if you run across one.
Well, it's very difficult to tell. But like I said, I was going to get into the psychopath thing was when I was researching my book, 36 Strategies about war, and
Okay.
I started to notice personality traits of all these emperors, the Roman emperors, Caligula and Nero and Augustus Caesar, and then going over into, the Chinese emperors and the Japanese shoguns and the French kings and the English kings, and they were all psychopaths. But what really hit home to me was reading about World War One, because I realized that the generals and the politicians that on both sides, but mostly on the Allied side, okay, the British and the American and all that, this whole trench warfare that they had set up made absolutely no sense from a strategic point of view. I would never, if I had been in charge, I would never have done that. I would have no trenches. That's not how you fight wars. They did that on purpose to kill a lot of 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old boys. That's why World War One was fought. It was fought not because we were defending Europe from the Germans, or because that had nothing to do with it. The entire war was orchestrated and run from the very beginning with one purpose in mind, other than to make money for the bankers. But the other purpose was to kill a lot of people. They did it on purpose. I'll give you an example. The famous General Pershing, I don't know if you've heard of him. They
Yes, I
named a
have.
tank after him. And I think there's a statue of him in West Point, all right? Now, on November 11th at 8 o'clock in the morning, he gets a telegram saying that we're signing an armistice at 11 o'clock this afternoon. That's why we get 11/11/11, right? Which is Remembrance Day, which is
Hmm.
the end of World War One. So basically, in 3 hours, the war is over. You know what this son of a bitch Pershing did? He ordered his men out of the trenches to make a full frontal assault on the Germans, head on into the machine guns, resulting in, I forget what the number was, 3,000, 4,000 casualties. Knowing that the war is going to be over in 3 hours, that this hell was coming to an end, and knowing that every time you ordered your men up over the lip of the trench, and they had to race 200 yards across no man's land through barbed wire and mortar fire and machine gun fire, and they'd been doing that for 4 years, and it resulted in nothing but thousands, hundreds of thousands of deaths. 3 hours before the war ended, he ordered his men to go and attack the Germans. Now that
You
is a
know that he knew.
psychopath. Okay, now he's not a
Yes,
serial
it is.
killer,
Right.
but he's a mass murderer because,
Yes.
as a psychopath, he was able to get into a position of power in the military. And then when you have these people in positions of power, they don't have to go. How many people does a serial killer? I think, the record is something like 40, 60 people. You get these
Right.
people in government. they're psychopaths. Now, they don't
Yes.
personally kill everybody, but they arrange it. And that blood
They
on their hands,
manipulate circumstance.
exactly. And so that's what this guy did. So he, the war was over. He wanted to kill another 4,000 of his own troops. These were
Yeah,
American
it doesn't.
boys. And think about a Norman Rockwell painting, right? How Norman
Yes.
Rockwell portrayed American life in those
Yeah,
times,
the Americana and all that. Yes.
the Americana, the wholesomeness, and understand that a lot of these people, a lot of the soldiers, they were farm kids.
Yes.
They bought into the
They went off. They were thinking of war in a very like romantic. What's the only word I can think of?
absolute,
Romantic way of going off to war, not knowing really what was waiting for them.
not knowing what was going on. They had a romantic and naive, of course, but they bought into the propaganda because all war propaganda is the same. Even
Yes.
today,
Yes.
let's go out and defend your country and save, and the girls back home will love you when you come back with a medal.
Right. Yes.
They buy into all that propaganda. So these were just farm kids. They were young boys.
Yeah.
They
They had that mustard, the use of the mustard gas and stuff like that which was horrendous.
the
Um,
entirety of World War One was a horror show on all levels.
yes.
And of course most of the injuries were facial injuries. These were because they were peek up over the trench, and they'd have their nose blown off, their face blown off, half their head blown off, and they'd survive. But then the rest of their life they have to go around wearing a mask,
Right.
right? Because half their
Exactly.
face is gone.
Exactly.
And
Yeah, there was a lot of psychological trauma also. A lot of them came back very traumatized.
very traumatized because oh my God, look at they would go to bed at night and rats would be eating their face. I mean it was.
Hmm.
And when I read the World War One history, that's when I knew that it was psychopaths behind that. That's when I started my research into psychopaths. What are these people? Who could do that to their fellow man? What are they? And that's how I discovered psychopaths. Now, psychopaths are very difficult to spot because a lot of times they're very charming. That's why they make good politicians. They're almost all compulsive liars, right? So when you see all these presidential speeches and their campaign speeches and all that, oh my God, not a word of truth has ever passed their lips because they're psychopaths. They're good at lying. You and I would blush if we told the kind of lies these people tell, but they don't blush because they're psychopaths. They have no shame, no conscience. So they can do this, and then other people go, well, how could he lie that much? He must be telling the truth. No, he's not telling the truth. He's a
And
psychopath.
don't they learn also how to mimic regular emotion for the
Oh,
benefit of
absolutely.
others,
They
so
do
that they
that
don't
from
fall under suspicion?
an early age. Psychopaths. They
Yes.
starting at the age of like 4, 5, 6. They already start to mimic you because they know they are different. They know that like you're crying because your dog died, and they look at you and think, why is Marlene crying? It's just a stupid dog, right? They don't get it. But they know that they have to imitate it in order not to stand out as a freak. So at an early age, they start, oh,
Right.
Marlene's
All they have to do is get one or a couple like weird glances. They realize, ooh,
That's right.
head.
Yeah,
Well, I'm sure. Haven't you heard these people that have murdered their spouses or girlfriends from both sexes, by the way?
sure. Yeah.
And then they get caught because a week later they're out partying,
Yeah,
and they don't get it. They don't see what's wrong.
that's right.
Why the police is now suspecting them because they're like, hey, I'm hooking up with my mistress or I'm with my boyfriend, and we're going off to Cancun to have a good time. So and so died last week. What's the big deal?
Yeah,
Because they don't get it.
they don't get it.
Hmm.
I remember that famous case. I forget her name. She murdered her little 4-year-old daughter. Remember that one?
Casey Anthony.
Casey Anthony. That's right. And so her daughter's missing. Everybody's looking for her, and
Yes.
she's out partying. She's having a good time. That's why
Yes.
I knew she was guilty immediately because psychopath.
Yes.
Now
Well,
this.
there was a story that I recently was researching. Something along the same. This is this couple. They had adopted a kid in Florida. Okay, like in 1970 something, when he was 7 years old. They fostered him, then they adopted him.
Mm-hmm.
They in Florida. They moved to Alabama. When he's like 13 years old, okay, suddenly he disappears. All right. The father says that he had a kid in the town, which is a smaller Alabama town, say that he saw the kid walking away with a stranger. All
Uh-huh.
right.
Uh-huh.
The police think it's a runaway. The parents, the adopted parents, put out flyers. The newspapers come and interview them. They're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, it's agony,
Yeah.
quote unquote agony."
Yeah.
They do everything that you would think distraught parents. Fast forward 9 years, in the early 90s, they sell the house, and the new owners. This was it was a like a 100-year-old antebellum house.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's got those big columns in the front.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're excavating under the front porch because they're remodeling.
Yeah.
And what do they find?
Uh-huh.
The 13-year-old's body.
Yeah.
Okay. And these parents, especially the father, the one that actually killed him, they were telling anybody who would listen to them and basically pointing the finger at the police because the police wasn't taking them seriously because the police thought it was a runaway and somebody had taken their son.
Mm-hmm.
When in reality, he had killed them.
Yeah.
They had even offered a reward because, of course, they knew nobody was going to claim it because
Sure.
he
Yeah.
was under the front porch.
Yeah.
And it's almost like what you were saying. They do all these, this pantomime, this theater,
Yes.
to throw people off.
Yeah.
And you would think most people, most normal people, would be like, I could never do that. I couldn't fake that.
Yeah. Well, that's the problem. You see, normal people can't wrap their minds around psychopaths, and that's why I started writing about them. I wrote about them in my book, The Art of Urban Survival, which is a book on, how to survive what's coming. It's actually a prophecy. I knew this was all coming down, the end of civilization, and so the book is laid out in exactly that order. But the very first chapter is psychopaths, because I knew the psychopaths are dominating everything. And people need, before we can make a better world, if you don't know and you don't understand the psychology of psychopaths, you will not have a clue as to why things are going the way they are going now. You need to understand it. If you don't understand them, you will be a victim of them. And as a society, we need to understand them because we are being victimized.
And you know why it's so important what you're saying, Stefan?
Yeah.
My concern is that nowadays, exactly what we're talking about, people, what's the word I'm looking, are so helpless
Mm-hmm.
that they'll listen to somebody who demonstrates any type of confidence,
Yeah.
and it's like, my concern is people that will fall into the trap of following or accepting from a psychopath, like as in Jim Jones.
Yeah.
You would think, who would believe this? But nowadays, I can see where a lot of people, which are just scared, they're scared of the shadow,
Yeah.
falling into the clutches of somebody of what we would call a psychopath. Basically, God knows what they're capable of.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, better to work it out. And I'm hoping, that they look at these earmarks ahead of time and they realize what they're dealing with before they fall into a situation with somebody. Regardless of what they title themselves as, whether it's a politician, clergy,
Doctor.
anything. Doctor, God. Yeah, I have no idea.
Look at Dr. Fauci, classic psychopath. Classic.
Yes. And people think, I think one of the things also that, not because, when they say something and they double down on a lie,
Yeah.
it's almost like they can't get beyond themselves. How dare you question me?
Yeah. They always double
Yeah.
down on their lies. Always.
Yes.
A psychopath will never say, "Okay, you caught me." Never. Oh my God. Look at that Jesse Smollett clown.
You know what? I stopped looking at that towards the end after the last thing that he's. I'm not gonna kill. He's like, you're not an actor. Stop. You're in court now. You're not going out for the Academy Award.
Nobody is
I'm
an
not
actor.
going to kill myself.
He
Well,
is an
I
actor.
know.
He's-
In his mind, but it's like,
No, but that's what psychopaths are. They're actors.
yeah. They're always doing
They fake that all the
pro.
time. So even though, when I first heard the story, I laughed. I went, "What? White
Yeah,
supremacists,
Chicago.
Chicago, late at night?"
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
folks, if you want to commit suicide and you're a white man, just go walk down the streets of Chicago
Yeah,
after
it's like
dark. Okay, see how long you last. And they're attacking black men so I knew the story from the very beginning was total, and I knew he was a
yes,
psychopath. Only a psychopath would come up with such an outrageous lie. And then during the trial and everything else with his Nigerian friends and the
yeah.
CCTV
Which is
footage and even getting convicted. And what's he doing now? Comes out with a
Stefan.
song saying how he's so innocent and he's being set up. That is a psychopath. They never stop with the
Yes.
lies, okay? You got to understand. And a lot of people go, well, he must be innocent because if he was guilty, how could he,
How could? Yeah.
in face of all this evidence and the obviousness of his lies, and he's still maintaining he's in it. So maybe he is. Look, folks, don't get fooled by that. And that's how they fool people. That's how the politicians fool people. Look at Biden up there. Oh, it's all Putin's fault. Oh, for Christ's sakes, But
Well, you know what it is. You know what it is. If you're gonna tell a lie, tell a big whopper. Tell
tell
a
a
big
big
one,
whopper. The bigger the
because
lie,
the
the more people
enormity
believe it.
of it will leave people like, how could it be a lie? It's so huge.
Yeah.
It's like,
But
yes.
that's what they do. Don't
And
get fooled by it. You can call them out, you can have them dead to rights. They will still lie. They will still lie and squirm and manipulate. But that's what makes them successful. That's why psychopaths will infiltrate and dominate
yes,
every power structure. We often hear about the pyramid, in the occult world and how it's evil. For me, what the pyramid is a organizational flow chart. That's what it is. The king's at top,
okay,
then the barons and dukes are the next level, and then the ministers and the level below that, right? So it's a flow chart. It's an organizational flow chart. And you have that chart in every organization. There's the Pope, and then there's the bishops and the cardinals. So, same thing. It's a pyramid structure. You have your corporate structure. You have your CEO and the CFO and vice presidents and all. It's a flow chart. And psychopaths are attracted to power like flies are attracted to shit. And whatever that power, the police department, municipal government, federal government, state government, corporations, the medical association, anytime you have a hierarchical structure, which is why I'm a bit of an anarchist.
because it gives them control. That's what they crave, control.
Control, exactly. Now, they will always get to the top
Hey,
position, always,
control
unless
gives them control.
unless you have a population with a lot of people like me around that can call them out on it, can see through them, and can try to prevent them. But
Right.
you know, Marlene, you know, I'm a rare species now. It wasn't so earlier, and there
Well,
were,
nowadays,
yeah.
well, I think, and I know that people are gonna say, "Well, Marlene, you're going into um, uh, paranoid or conspiracy land." But sometimes I think that for quite some time, not recently, but for quite some time, a lot of major corporations and or agencies
Oh,
have actively promoted this personality type.
yeah,
Okay, it's like
absolutely,
this is what that you would think. Who would want that? And then not just one, several of them.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
It was like they were how can I say they were, when somebody does an application for a position,
Mm-hmm.
somewhere along the lines they're looking for certain that will fit that bill as in
Mm-hmm.
that psychological profile, and they advance them. Because I worked for many years also in a major corporation, and you would see sometimes people getting advanced that you're like, I don't get that.
Yeah,
I don't get that.
yeah,
This person is like, but one thing they were really good at, they were very cutthroat.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah. And that's
and
why
it's
normal people cannot compete against them. Normal,
yeah,
healthy people that have a moral code, you cannot compete against them. You will lose. And I'll tell you why. let's say, me and another psychopath, we're working for a corporation. We want to apply for the position of vice president or whatever, and we're in competition with each other. Now, what the psychopath will do is put some cocaine in my desk drawer, download some child pornography onto my computer, start a whisper campaign amongst all the other employees around the water cooler. Oh, did you see Steph? Does he look like he's on coke? And he's sniffling a lot these days. And
Yeah.
and then
I'm concerned. I'm concerned for him because I hope, something's not going on with
I
him
hope
because they
he's
do
not
that a
on
lot.
drugs. And
Yeah.
you know, and then do an anonymous tip to the police or to the boss or something. And
Yeah.
well, then they come and they look at my desk drawer. Oh, there's coke in there. But because they've already set it up with the whisper campaign.
Yeah. They have in major corporation. They have something called an ombudsman.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is basically a snitch line.
Yeah.
That supposedly you keep your anonymity, but you're reporting to the ombudsman anything of concern along the lines
Yeah.
of what you just described.
Yeah. Oh, Stefan's been hitting on the secretaries and all that. Whatever. So then time comes for your
Yeah.
promotion. Guess who they're going to promote? Now, you can't think to do that. You can't think to slip cocaine into the desk drawer of your opponent or upload some pornography onto his website or whatever.
No.
But they think of that. They know how to do that.
No.
And that's why they win every time. We cannot compete with them because they are incorrigible.
Sure.
They'll do anything. They'll sleep with the boss. They'll invite their boss over to their house and have their 12-year-old daughter sleep with the boss. Right? That's what these people do. And that's why they get promoted. You don't know why they got promoted. But he flaunted his 6-year-old son in front of them or whatever. They know because a lot of people, and especially up in the higher echelons, they're sick people. Psychopaths are sick people. Same thing with all this child
Oh yeah.
molestation. Psychopaths are notorious for targeting children.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
anytime you have a bunch of psychopaths in control, you will see a lot of child trafficking. I'm thinking Hollywood, Disney,
Yes.
the music industry. Why do you think we hear all these stories about all these, child actors being raped and, pop stars like Britney
Yeah.
Spears? Of course she's been raped, probably since she was 8. Why? Because they work in an industry dominated by psychopaths, which is Hollywood, which is the music industry.
And chances are that one of the parents might even be a psychopath. Because most parents, I'm not going to say all parents, most parents would either be very vigilant or at the first sign of something like this, they would pull their kid out and say, I don't care if you don't make the money, but I'm not going to leave you in that cesspool.
That's right.
But they
That's
don't
right.
care if the price they pay for fame or riches via their child
Yeah.
is that their kid is basically, okay, for the price of putting you in the, what was it, that they were in the Mickey Mouse Club?
Mickey
This is
Mouse
where
Club.
A lot of them,
Yeah.
this was a springboard for them as children.
Yeah.
Okay, the price, of course, stated behind closed doors, is that we're basically going to peddle your child around
Yeah.
to pederasts.
Yeah. There was a
what it is.
documentary about
And the parents are like, oops, okay.
Michael Jackson, and now Michael Jackson is a victim of childhood
Yeah.
abuse, right? And
Absolutely, yes.
but you see, if you have a tendency towards being a psychopath, now not all psychopaths are evil. There is a
No, some
doctor.
control things.
There is a doctor. I forget his name. He came out with a book called The Warrior Gene, and he had devised a genetic test to test if you have that gene, you would tend to be a psychopath. And he tested it himself, and he had that. He was a psychopath. And he went to his family, and he told his family, he said, I just found out I'm a psychopath. And his family said, yeah, we know. But you're not a bad guy.
I know that.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Until they speak to.
Yeah.
There's also something called the dark triad,
Yes. Yeah.
which I think is psychopath, narcissism, what's the third one? I can't remember right now. Just certain
Sociopath. Yeah.
traits.
Yeah.
Is it sociopath?
Yeah.
That there's certain traits that basically you can what you might call it, rate yourself on, like different degrees of.
Yep.
And it's really funny because a lot of the people that do that self-identify with one of these pathologies. They really get it when they ask their family members, and their family members are like, "Yeah, you're a real jerk,"
Yeah. Yeah.
and they're like, "Huh?"
Yeah. But
And that's to put it nicely.
yeah, this doctor's family said, "Yeah, we know you're a psychopath. You don't cry when the dog dies, and you don't feel the things that we feel. But you've always been a good man to us." So
Yeah.
he had the psychopathic gene, so he's unable to process empathy, right? And
Right.
now, if you take somebody with that and you abuse them, now they become a serial killer,
Ooh, violence, absolutely. If they were
right?
brought up in a violent environment.
Yeah,
But say, for example, they'll say with the psychopaths, because they have no remorse, they don't understand love the way we do. And they'll say, well, you'll hear psychopaths that get married and have children. They say, well, depends if they see the need where the marriage to a certain person, whether because of her position or her looks, will benefit him.
right.
Let's go with a politician, right?
Yep.
Okay, where, hey, having a wife and kids is going to benefit him greatly in advancement through the political, ladder.
Yep.
So of course he picks a certain woman that looks maybe a certain way with a certain personality,
Yep.
and he'll have the kids, and he cares about them, but only in the scope of what they do for him.
Sure.
All right.
Yeah.
And in other words, I hate to say it, everything around him is meant to be used in some way to have him achieve whatever it is that he wants. Ultimately, of course, with control being the ultimate objective.
Yep.
For example, they'll say some psychopaths, which have a tendency towards being arsonists,
Mm-hmm.
they set a fire and they'll watch. But what they get their not because they're trying to kill anybody, they'll do it like, let's say, after hours or something. But they enjoy watching the fire department and everybody running around trying to put out the fire.
Yep.
And they feel I control them. I made them do all this,
Yes.
the hoses and the sirens and they'll be watching because this is how they get their satisfaction.
Yes.
And for most
Exactly.
human beings, they go, that's satisfying. And it's like, yeah, for somebody who doesn't get reward from love and other things, yeah.
Yeah.
And I understand what you're saying. When you're normal, whatever normal is, okay, that's a broad term. It's very difficult for us to understand that.
Very difficult, and that's
That
why
personality.
the psychopaths get away with what they get away with. They control the world right now. Every major corporation,
It's very
every
sad, but yes.
every political system. Like I haven't voted in 50 years. I wouldn't waste my time because I know they're all going to be psychopaths. Every one of them.
Okay. So Stefan, let's get down. Let's say all hell breaks loose, and like I've told people, I live down in South Florida in hurricanes. I've been in situations where there's no electricity,
Hmm.
looting's going on. People don't realize how quick we devolve into that, and that was a very minor scale in
Hmm.
comparison to something more broad, as in the U.S. A breakdown of the economy, even if it's temporary, whatever. I've seen it break down, even with the military in town. I've seen it happen
Hmm.
with looting and everything. Let's say here you're at home or wherever you live, whether it's the suburbs or a little bit out in the rural area, and what would you say to somebody that comes asking you for food?
Well,
And we're like, this is when now the stores are empty, and either they've been ransacked and there's nothing, and nothing's rolling in out nowhere. It
Yeah.
doesn't, in other words, doesn't matter whether you have money or not. There's just nothing to buy.
yeah, no, yeah, it's and that's a scenario we are most likely going to enter into very shortly. They've already been warning us.
Mm-hmm.
They've already been foreshadowing that, right? Like in writing when you want to
Right.
You want to get the reader ready for the big punch. You foreshadow it so
Mm-hmm.
that they're
Yes.
anticipating it, and they've been doing that to us. They're already telling us. Biden, Trudeau
Sure.
here, or as I like to call him, Adolf Castro. They're already
Yes.
warning people about food shortages. So what? Also, you study the history of communism. What did the communists always do? They starve their populations. We are under
Yes.
a communist regime right now. Oh, they don't call themselves communist. Doesn't matter
Of
what
course
they
not.
call themselves. I had my doctor friend wrote a series of essays. We discussed it. We wrote it in general about the tyranny of words. You can't believe the words. It doesn't matter. These people lie. They say, "Oh, we're
Yes.
Democrats. Oh, we care about Black Lives Matter." They don't care about any of that
Whatever.
stuff. Forget it.
Right.
That's all just bullshit. They're lying.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
you know, so they're not saying, "Oh, we're communist Marxists and we want to take over." Of course, they're not going to say that. They're psychopaths. They know better than to say that. But that's what they
Sure.
are, and that's what they're doing. Look what's happened in the last 2 years. Look what's happened in the last
Yes.
3 months here in Canada, where we had a peaceful, the most peaceful. And I went out and I greeted the truckers when they all went past through our small
Mm-hmm.
town. I was there on the highway waving the flags, and they were honking the horns. The most peaceful protest, and all the
Yes.
people that supported them, they were farmers, they were families, grandmas, toddlers,
Yeah. Regular people.
regular salt of the earth people. And then they get there to Ottawa, and the little psychopath there, Adolf Castro, says, "Oh, they're Nazis and racists and all that." And I went, "You son of a bitch, you dirty, low life little piece
Yeah.
of crap," because these were the people, again, from a Norman Rockwell painting, okay? Good,
Sure.
honest, hard-working people. And look at what he did. Confiscated their bank accounts, took
Yeah.
their trucks, called them every name under the book, instituted martial law, for crying out loud. Martial law.
Right.
The Emergency Powers Act, which has only been enacted once in the history of Canada, and the only other time was during World War II. So it's something that you only institute if you're at war, in a world war. This is how quickly that's all changed.
Well,
So
I think a lot of people have realized what politicians can do with the emergency powers.
yeah,
Uh huh.
yeah. So it's a communist system, and the communists always starve people. That's
Yes.
what Stalin did with the Holodomor there in the Ukraine, and his own people too, the Russians. Everybody starved. Look at Mao
Mm-hmm.
Zedong, 80 million people. 80
Yes.
million people, probably the biggest genocide in human history. Mao Zedong.
Yes.
Look at the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia.
Yes.
Look at Cuba. They did the same, and
Yes. Yes. They
and
did.
what was that? The other one? Nicaragua, Venezuela.
When originally the Sandinistas in Nicaragua, and now they're back. I can't believe it. They
Yeah,
got the communists out, and now they've fallen right back into it, which is a shame.
terrible.
But
But that's what they do because it's cheap and
yeah, they
easy.
do. Look at Venezuela. My God, people are eating zoo animals for
I
my.
I'd say that
Uh,
all the time. They're eating their cats and
yeah.
dogs.
Yes.
So
Yes.
America,
And you know what the worst part is? That people don't realize this. And I'm familiar with it because I said, I mean, I was born and raised in Miami, but let's face it, it was a Cuban exile community. And so you hear this thing of promoting snitching.
yeah,
And that makes my blood boil.
me too.
Because in Cuban, they call them a chivato. And in Cuba, what they would do is they would put somebody on your block.
Yeah,
All right? And this person, this snitch, all they would do is watch everybody on that block to see who was coming and who was going.
yep.
And did I smell meat cooking from your house?
y-
Wait, they did not give any meat out this week from the monthly whatever, when you
Right.
stood in line.
Your rations.
They
Yeah.
would do things like this.
Oh yeah.
And they're doing the line that we nowadays in this society, we have fallen into the same thing where once upon a time being a snitch was a rat.
Yeah.
This was the lowest on the, you're like nobody likes you.
Yeah.
You're a rat. And now it's been elevated to like, oh, you care. Yeah, all
Yeah,
right.
look at what they're doing
That
in England. They're paying snitches here in Canada too.
yes,
Recently,
they are.
they released the records from East Germany, from the Stasi
Mm-hmm.
there, and fully
Right.
40% of East Germans were snitches.
Yes.
So, but again, this is what communists do. This way, it divides the people. You cannot trust your
Yes.
neighbor. You can't trust your school teacher. You probably can't trust your sister.
Yes. They will turn people, your how can I say it, your allies, your possible allies,
Yeah,
they turn them into where everybody's. And by the way, everybody says, well, what are you supposed to do if, let's say, the government, whatever level, comes to you and says, hey, I want you to be the snitch, the whatever, but they're not going to call it a snitch, they're going to call it the whatever, the
yeah,
monitor. We want you to do that, and you're like, well, how can I? And then I'll be in trouble, right?
yeah,
Well, you know what? You can always go to that person that they're looking at and go, by the way, especially if you know who the person is. They've got their eye on you and they're asking me to look at you.
yeah,
Please don't, in other words,
yeah,
give this person a heads up, and then feed information and say, no, I've been watching them and everything's, there's nothing, this is happening and that's happening. But no, it's incredible how being a rat has been elevated to something it is absolutely not.
yeah. That was, Solzhenitsyn in his book.
Following orders.
Yeah, Solzhenitsyn in his book, the Gulag Archipelago, describes that when
Mm-hmm.
the Cheka, the Russian secret police, arrested people, they would put them in a jail cell with people from their neighborhood, their neighbors, right? And those neighbors would proceed to beat the living shit out of that person. They were armed with clubs, and they would beat him to within an inch of his life. This is to destroy the spirit, right? So that you will never trust another human being ever again. Communism is such an evil system, and any
Yes.
people that have lived under communism, I hate to say this, Marlene, because I know you came from Cuba, but they've been damaged. They're
Let me tell you,
damaged.
of course.
They're
Let
damaged
me tell
from
you
living under
something.
communism.
No. Okay. Let me explain something. As far as this, my grandfather had retired to Miami pre-Castro. He was a police officer, and he retired to Miami late 50s. Okay, but he was what the equivalent of a beat cop, vice cop kind of deal.
Right?
Where he dressed up in plainclothes. But you know how you would know the neighborhoods,
Yes.
and he had been doing that with a partner for many years. And he says he remembered towards the end of his career. He says, in other words, you know the neighborhood. He says, you know who's who, who's the petty thief, who's. And he says that this is around the time that they started planting bombs under people's like porches. And he
Hmm.
would arrive there. He says, one time I had a lady, they had blown off her legs. This was, believe it or not, these were communists. This is communist tactics.
Yeah.
Okay, but they would blame it on Batista, who was in power at that time. Which,
Right.
by the way, I'm not saying Batista didn't have his own problems,
Sure.
but Cuba, by no, way, 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 was, and I remember him telling me the story that he told all the kids, this is communism. And
Yeah.
they were like, oh no, no, And of course, later on, it turned out, and everybody like scrambled out of there. And I was born in the United States. But fast forward, amongst the older Cubans,
Hmm.
the last true Cubans that left Cuba for truly the real reasons was 1970. Anybody that came after that immigrated for economic purposes. And in 1980, they had the Mariel boat lift.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
When the Mariel boat lift came, is really when the people that came over were either born into the communist system or
Yeah.
grew up in the communist system. And I understand that he let out um, the people in the mental institutions and the worst criminals. In other words, he emptied out all his headaches.
Yeah.
But for the Cubans that were living in Miami, it was like a scourge descended on us.
Yeah. Yeah.
A good majority of Cubans living there were victimized either by strangers, my family included, or by even their own family members that they had brought over
Yep.
to help them out.
Yep.
So my point is that if anybody understands exactly what you just described as far as what communism does to the mentality and the way people behave and they act and they see life. I absolutely know it. I saw it firsthand for many, many, many years.
Yeah.
Okay? As far as the morals, the principles, the way you live life,
Yeah.
how law abiding you are,
Yeah.
etc., etc. Too divergent. And the the center of that separation was those who were brought up or indoctrinated under communist rule.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That's
this is
why.
not an argument. This is firsthand experience.
Yes. Yeah.
This is nobody that told me.
Right.
I know this is the truth.
Yeah.
And people might not like it, but it is what it is. So, and I'm sure that that was just not a Cuban situation. Wherever you have that form of government,
Yes.
whatever country it is,
Yeah.
exactly what you described as far as how they handle their population
Yeah. It doesn't matter
and what
if they were
comes of it.
born and raised under a communist regime. They could be Polish or Hungarian or Russian or Cambodian
Yes.
or and Chinese. Look what's going on in China now. What? They're killing the cats and dogs. The bastards. The Chinese are. Now, I've lived in Taiwan,
Yes.
and the Chinese people in
I hear that they've locked down
Shanghai.
sometimes, and this is one of the things that I've heard as far as willing to sacrifice a certain portion of their population, whatever the situation,
Hmm.
whereas, as in, we're going to lose X of millions in this, whatever it is, this experiment, this action, this military action, whatever. And it's like, okay, if that's the cost that has to be paid, we'll pay it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, in other words, if you're going to go by the metric of, oh, they would never do that because it would equate to X amount of casualties,
Yeah. Forget about it.
that you cannot apply that
No.
to to the people that make the decisions in that country.
Yeah. Yeah. Like
They
I was
won't.
going to say is
If that's the cost has to be paid,
I lived in Taiwan, Hong Kong,
they
and
won't.
mainland China, and the
Um,
Chinese in Hong Kong are nice. They're business people.
let's they
And the Chinese people in Taiwan were great people. I love the Chinese people in Hong Kong, Taiwan. The Chinese people in mainland China, they don't give a rat's ass about anything, about pets or animals or children. There's videos of toddlers being run over by trucks and lying in the street, and people just walk by. Nobody stops. Nobody checks on the kid. Nobody picks him up, gets him out of the road at least. I used to be an instructor for St. John Ambulance, which is the Commonwealth version of the Red Cross. And
that's incredible.
our whole point was that we are there if there's an accident and we know what to do and to save people's lives. That was a part of it. I've done that myself many times. People had an accident, I'll stop my car and I'll go out and help. But in mainland China, they won't do that. They don't. This is what communism does. It sucks the soul out of people, and that's what we're under now, folks. And that's where we're headed to. Just to answer your question quickly about what would you do if people come to you and you're starving, as I market myself as something as an expert on survivalism and being a prepper. I've been a prepper since I was 12. Because we were brought up with the threat of nuclear annihilation, so I started prepping at an early age. What I recommend is this, and I've spoken to preppers, and I don't like a lot of the preppers. I find them a little bit too radical. They got the story. Well, if my neighbor comes and asks me for food, I'm just going to shoot him in the driveway. Oh, okay, all right. I tried to warn them. They didn't stockpile food. Too bad for them. I'm going to shoot them. And I'm thinking, okay, asshole. I mean, is that what you're put on this planet to do? So what I do is now I'm not religious, but I believe in the in the tithe. The tithe, is it?
Mm-hmm.
I think you should set aside 10% of the food you've stockpiled, and that 10% is to go to your
Yes.
neighbors. Okay? Now, you don't hand that food out from your front door. Okay? So what I would do is, I would cook up a big giant pot of spaghetti. A big pot of spaghetti will feed 3 or 4 families, right?
Okay.
I would take that pot of spaghetti myself to the neighbor's house and just leave it on their front door. That's how you handle it. You can't let people know that you've got food, but on the other
Right.
hand, I can't be sitting there stuffing my face and watching, because what if your neighbor's got children? What if they got
Yeah,
small
no,
kids?
exactly. And that's exactly my point, where it's the part that you want to help them, but then they warn, like, okay, once it's out that you do might have something, all right,
Yeah.
then in other words, then when they run out again, they're gonna come back, and they're
Yes,
not,
they are going to
no
come
matter how
back.
nice you are attending them.
Yeah, because they know you're the only one that's got food in the neighborhood. But like I said,
Yeah.
or you could set up like and lots of community groups do this. I recommend people, form their own community disaster response groups. So, when we seen that flooding there in Texas, there were,
Right.
local people that came out and they set up tents, and they distributed food. They had food lines, soup lines, right?
Sure.
They open up
Yes.
soup kitchens, not in front of your house, and you don't tell them that that's food that you brought. You just say, "Oh, some food was donated, and we're
Right.
going to set up a food kitchen." So that's what I advise people to do. Because listen, I cannot just turn my back on people that are suffering. I
Oh
can't
no.
do that. And even though I
Right.
can't feed everybody, if I can feed a few people, now, if there was another 100 people like me, then we could feed the whole town. Okay, if we all pitched in and contributed a little bit, you had 20 people that all gave 10% of their food supplies, you could feed the whole town. So that's what I recommend. You got to be prepared. You got to stockpile food for what's coming, which is going to be the Great Famine. This will go down in history. The death toll in the world is going to go through the roof within the next year or two. Okay, or what you've seen
It's
during
horrible to
World
think
War
of.
II with 80 million dead here, 60 million dead there, 20 million dead here. That's going to pale in comparison to what's coming. So you need to get prepared. I tell this to everybody.
And well, let me ask you something. What happens? I'm gonna I'm gonna I'm gonna go ahead and pick your brain a little bit more. What happens if the one that's coming now, looking for food, is not your neighbor or the guy down at the corner? It's a stranger, somebody that you know. That I'm gonna give you a perfect example. I
Okay.
lived like 20 miles from a major city. When I mean major, it's not the biggest. I'm 15 between, right in the middle.
Right.
Okay. In other words, I live in a rural area, and I mean, we've got animals. The guy across the street from me is a trapper and a hunter. We've already coordinated.
Yeah.
Okay, but what happens? How do you think when you start getting the spillover from people that live in the urban environment, and
Yeah.
that's it? That there's nothing there, so they're starting to leave that area looking for sources.
Well, there's a whole strategy to employ. I
Hmm.
mentioned that to the gentleman this afternoon because a lot of people say, "Well, I want to move to Mexico. I want to move to Honduras. I want to run away. I want
Yes,
to
I've
run
heard that.
away." Yeah, everybody wants to run away, but I don't recommend Mexico or Honduras,
No.
especially for white people, because you will always be the gringo, and
Oh yeah.
when your check stops coming, all those really
It's
friendly Mexican people, they're not going to be that friendly anymore. I'm just,
That's
this is
right.
human nature,
Yeah.
nothing against Mexicans, but it's in-group preferences.
Yes,
So if you're
it is.
you're the gringo, they all think you got money, they all think you're rich, they all think,
Hmm.
so, and if shit hits the fan, and it'll hit the fan all over the world, Europe, Canada, the United
Yes.
States, when it hits Mexico, they have in-group preference, and they're going to go, we're
Sure.
starving, our children are starving. I bet you those gringos in that gated community have food.
I've got food.
Yeah, so
Exactly.
that's why I would not move to
Absolutely.
Mexico. I don't recommend anybody that. Stay with your own people. They might be
Hmm.
a-holes, but
Yes.
at least, but
You have
one
a better
is,
chance of survival, I think.
yeah, One thing is, I told the gentleman I spoke this afternoon, and he lives in Long Island, and he wants to run away. I said, okay, yeah, but like, how much money do you have? For you to move your house and all your supplies and all this. I mean, if you've got $100,000 to spend on that, okay, then I can help you. But if you don't have that kind of money, then stay where you are. He goes, well, what about, if they're going to come looting door to door? I said, well, this is what you do. First of all, you stockpile some plywood, okay, 3/4 inch plywood, enough to cover up the inside, the ground floor windows of your house and the front door, okay? So when you start to see people going up and down the street looting, breaking into houses and doing what they do, I said, you nail up all that plywood. Then you go outside and you smash all your windows. Then you take some furniture, old clothing, garbage that you have in the house, and you spread it all over your front yard. As much garbage as you can. Throw the chairs out there, throw some of your clothes out there, whatever garbage. Then you take a can of spray paint and you spray paint all of your house with gang signs. So when they're going down the street looting and they see this house with all the windows smashed out, garbage all over the front yard, the whole place is spray painted up, they're going to think you've already been looted. Right? Again, what I'm saying is that cunning and ruthlessness, you will survive anything. Now, if that doesn't work, I also recommended that you cut 2-inch by 6-inch slits in the plywood. And you need guns. You need guns. So if the show you have where, it looks like you've been looted, garbage, maybe even start a fire on your front door and then put it out so that it looks like it's been burned out and all that. If that doesn't dissuade them and they're still coming up your driveway, well, unfortunately, you're going to have to start shooting. But at least you have a very good defensible position. They can't see you. They won't know where the shots are coming from. Most conflicts between animals are solved through, animals of the same species are solved through what's called threat display behavior. Lions rarely kill each other, but they'll roar, they'll bare their teeth, and they'll raise their hackles, and they'll make aggressive gestures. You see the same thing among humans. A lot of times, before a fight breaks out, what you see is the guys are yelling, and they're puffing up, and they're stomping the ground, and they're smacking the table, and they're waving their fists in the air. This is all threat display behavior. This is what primates do. And usually what happens is whoever looks the most threatening, the other people will back down. Like my story with the guys that wanted to shake me down for a beer and my bicycle and all that. I was a threat to them, not because I was doing the big display behavior, but because I wasn't doing any of that. So that ultimately was a form of threat display behavior. It scared them and it backed them off. First of all, we assume the gray man. The gray man is to make your house look like it's already been looted. Make it look like nobody lives there. If you have a portable generator, great. Don't run the lights at night. And, don't play the stereo in the afternoon or something like that. Be very quiet. Yeah. Make it look like there's nobody home so that, listen, if you're going down the street there's hundreds of houses to loot. Why would you waste your time on this place? But if somebody decides to waste their time on this place and they suddenly are taking fire, and you don't have to kill them, you just have to shoot over their head, or you can shoot in front of their feet or something like that. They hear the gunshots, they can't see where it's coming from because your place is all boarded up and you've got shooting ports. Even better would be to have 20 of your neighbors all armed that are willing to come and you hold up, and that's again why I recommend people form communities. One part of the community is mutual defense. Make sure you all have walkie-talkies, right? So if the looters are coming up the street and they start down at the end of the street at Bob's house, Bob gets on the walkie-talkie. He calls it in. Look, there's guys that are trying to break down my door. Now you get 20 of your neighbors, come up behind them with firearms. And Bob is in the house and he's shooting out the house. Now you get them in a pincer movement. You got these guys in crossfire. They are not going to pursue it. They're not military. They're criminals. Criminals are not brave people. Oh, they're really brave when they're waving a gun in your face and you have no weapon. Oh, then they're brave. How many times have I seen that? These
Right.
street gangs and all that. Oh, they're such big shots. And then the cops come and shoot them in the leg, and they cry like little girls, "Mommy, mommy! I thought you were a big tough street gang thug." Yeah,
So,
when the odds are in
yeah,
their
you're right.
advantage, then they're big tough guys. But you shoot a couple of them in the knees, they're not tough guys anymore. And when they see there's 10, 20 guys behind them with shotguns. Now, it could be eventually what happens if this continues for a long enough time. There will be warlords. Always happens. The collapse of civilization, China, ancient Rome. When the dynasties collapsed and when Rome fell, yeah, Europe was overrun by warlords. Local dukes or barons, and they would have their castle and they would have their hundred men or whatever, and then they would take over the whole area and they would rob and rape and murder. You've seen the movies. That's what happens during the
Right.
that's why we call them the Dark Ages, because the Europe was ruled by a bunch of petty violent warlords. Now when it
And in
evolves
exchange, they kind of offered you a little bit of security, you know. That will
not
keep you
really
safe. But in
well,
the meantime, we're going to victimize you.
we're going to victimize you and we'll offer you protection from the next gang that wants to victimize
Right,
you.
exactly.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Which is so. Listen, if it devolves into a warlord scenario, then maybe your 20 guys aren't enough anymore.
No.
So,
I have to laugh because for all those newer generations that are into playing all these, games, where some of them are like, you live in all these kind of scenarios. It's like, boy, is that going to be a coming to Jesus moment for them if that ever happens and it's not a game anymore?
oh no, it's horrible. I mean, like I said, I've read a lot of history, and I went through the Dark Ages looking for military strategies and tactics. I didn't find any because the strategy was thuggery. These guys were just warlords. Same thing happened in China, especially back in the 1920s when the Qing dynasty fell and the Emperor Bu Yi abdicated, and China was divided up into 20, 30 areas, each one controlled by a warlord. And it was because China was so divided that the communists came to power.
Right.
Yeah, because there was no nationalist government. Well, there was the Kuomintang, which was the nationalists. They were the ones that eventually fled to Taiwan.
Let me ask you something though. Don't you think that there was elements of what would eventually become the communist movement in China during the Boxer Rebellion, or no?
Oh, well, listen, the powers that be, and what I mean is the New York bankers, the City of London bankers, they had their early pirate organizations known as the Dutch
Right.
East India Company and the British East India Company. They moved into China back in the 1860s already.
Right.
They were the ones that got the Chinese addicted to opium. That was the major supplier was known as the Sassoon family. So you might have heard of them for their hair products now or whatever, but
I was going to say, as in Vidal Sassoon?
yeah,
Really?
yeah,
Whoa.
that was his family.
Okay.
So they were Jews from Turkey, and they worked with the city of London, and London was in a trade deficit with China because Chinese were very arrogant at that time, and they said we don't need anything from the West. They couldn't sell them, British wool or anything like that, but the British wanted tea, and so the Chinese said, yeah, but you have to pay with silver. Until the silver reserves in England ran out, and they said we got to do something about that. The small hats there in Turkey, the Sassoon family said, well, why don't we sell them drugs? Oh, well, look who's behind most of the drug epidemic in the United States, right? Look at the
Yes.
OxyContin
Yes.
plague.
That's horrible.
And who's behind that? The same people again. It's an old
Fentanyl and all that.
strategy. Import a lot of drugs really cheap at first, okay? Get everybody addicted. And now they're dysfunctional.
Yes.
A society where you got, 20, 30% of the people addicted to opiates,
Yes.
they're no longer a functioning society. And that's what
Hmm.
the British East India Company did to China. And then,
They got.
before the Boxers, there was the
Hmm.
Taiping Rebellion. And I swear to God, that was set up, that was orchestrated. And up until that point in history, it was the most deadly civil war in history. Estimates of 20 to 60 million dead. And this is in the 1860s. And
Okay.
then guess what? Well, somebody has to save China from all these lunatics, right? And these were lunatics. I mean, the guy that started it said he was the reincarnated brother of Jesus Christ. I
Oh.
mean, that's how bizarre it was. I mean, there
Uh
were a
huh.
few missionaries there, but they hadn't converted Chinese people by any means.
Right.
But that's why I suspect, the usual suspects, as I call them, because that was just such. Anyways, so they had taken over 80% of China, and the Qin dynasty was at its end of its rope. They were about to fall.
Hmm.
Who went in there? It was the British and the Americans. And they went in there with their machine guns and their cannons, and they wiped out the Taipings. And at the same time, they looted the Forbidden City.
Right, because that right outside the Forbidden City, wasn't that where they set up the legations from all these different, or the consulates, but from all these different countries, and it was like, I want to say they I don't want to say they took over because it was in
They did
comparison to
take
the
over, yeah.
general population, but yeah, they put themselves on equal or superior footing to the, well, at that point it was still an imperial family there, but
Yep.
they you could tell it was, that the what was it, the Qin dynasty, they knew that they were faltering. What was it, Empress Z? She was
G.
the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
she was like, one of the she was basically hanging on to who would she use as an ally against whom, and yeah, and after that
And
it
then came
makes
the
you
Boxer Rebellion after that because
right.
the Americans and the British were there, looting the place and selling opium to everybody. And then, um, the last remaining members of the imperial clan said, well, listen, we got to get rid of all these goddamn Yanks and Brits.
Right.
They're destroying the country. And so then they started the Boxer Rebellion, but that was a huge failure
Right.
too. But
Yes. And getting back to your the other thing was is that's sometimes how, um, societies fall into where warlords all of a sudden
yeah,
can exist.
oh yeah, it can happen very quickly because listen,
Yes.
uh, let's say they turn off the power for 2 months.
God. Yeah.
After 2 months, how many people have 2 months worth of food in their house?
Nope.
Very few. Yeah, us preppers have, like I recommend everybody at this point. I used to say make sure you have 3 months worth of food. At this
Hmm.
point, I'm saying make sure you have a year worth of food.
Okay.
But if that went on for a year, I mean, how many people are going to be left alive? And also after the jab, how many people are going to be left alive?
Wow. That's the thing. People don't realize not only food, but medication.
Yep.
Even simple stuff like, I'm not even talking about, prescription. Let's not even go there,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
think of all the people. Let's say if you, need a certain prescription drug
yep,
to maintain yourself,
yeah,
there's gonna be a lot of people that without that,
yeah,
that's it. They're gonna.
yeah,
But, even stuff like, antibiotic ointment, or bandage,
yeah.
because sometimes all you need is get an infection
Oh, yeah.
from a
I
cut.
stockpile antibiotics. I tell everybody to stockpile them.
Yes.
Yeah. Keep
Yeah,
them in
I
your
some
medical
too.
kit. You need to have a medical
Mhm.
kit, right? In addition to the food and water, you need to have
Mhm.
radios, ham radios,
Yes.
and you need to have firearms. Now, I'm not one of those preppers. I don't have 50
Right.
guns and 20,000 rounds of ammunition. And I know a lot of guys that do. And I'm like,
Yeah,
okay,
I know, I
well,
know, I
nice,
know.
nice that you have a lot of little toys. But get a
Yes.
shotgun and a pistol. That's all you need, okay? Shotgun is great
Hmm.
for everything. Kills anything on the planet, right? And but you can use it to hunt birds and geese and ducks and stuff like that. So
Yes.
it's the most practical firearm for hunting and putting food on the table is a shotgun. But you put double aught buck in there, and you can take out 2, 3 guys that are coming through the front door with one shot. So
Yep.
get a shotgun, a 22 caliber rifle, and some kind of a pistol, and that's all you need. That's all you need. Okay. But then
Yeah.
have a good
Yeah.
medical kit, and I mean like stock it with everything you need: vitamins,
Yes.
herbal remedies, supplements, and antibiotics. And if you can get your hands on some OxyContin, like if it's an emergency, you break your leg and you're in
Hmm.
agony. Yeah, okay, give them
Yes.
an OxyContin, and that's what the purpose of these opioids are for,
Yes.
anyways, for extreme pain, not for
Hmm.
recreational use. But
Yes.
whatever you can get your hands on, Novocaine if you got that,
Right.
Lanacaine, so that you can do a minor surgery, get a suture kit, and get an IV, and get an enema bag, get pressure dressings,
Right.
burn dressings, eye dressings. Stock up on your medical equipment too. And
Yeah.
once you
People.
have
A
all
lot of people don't
that,
realize that you get somebody that's dehydrated. People don't realize that you can hydrate somebody a lot faster through the rectum.
yes,
Okay.
that's why I
Then
recommend everybody has the enema. Yeah,
yeah.
and also because in addition to the starvation and all that, who knows what kind of biological warfare, what kind of diseases? There's a lot of diseases that will spread, cholera,
Mm.
dysentery,
Yes.
and those diseases kill you by dehydrating you. I've seen what dehydration can do to people. You could die in like 4 or 5 hours if you're not hydrated. You vomit and you pee and you have diarrhea, and all the electrolytes are flushed out of your system. Then 4 to 12 hours later, you'll have a heart attack and die. And
Yeah.
how do you get fluids into them if they can't drink anything by orally?
Exactly.
So that's why you
If
need
they're
the enema.
vomiting it out, if they're vomiting stuff out, which
Yeah,
happens
and
when
if you're a
somebody's really sick like
phlebotomist,
that.
get an IV.
Yeah.
Get several, because that
Yes.
will save lives. That will save lives. So that's what I recommend people. And then if you can survive the first 3 months, you're probably going to be okay. If it continues and you enter the warlord phase, um, well, I always make a joke here in Canada because we have such strict firearms regulations. Places like Toronto, the only people that have guns are the street gangs. They said, "Well, what would you do if this happened here in Toronto?" I said, well, "Guess what? I got a shotgun, so I'm automatically king of Toronto."
Yeah. It's like, hello.
Hello.
You know what? And people don't realize. I mean, I have a firearm. I've had it for quite some time because I used to work cases. I was a weekend, at night, and I would come home and it was dark, and I had never carried a gun before that. Never felt the need, but I got it, and now I'm glad I have it.
Yeah. No,
And because I never, how about this? I never thought that when I got it originally, I would end up being so glad because of what's going on now. I would
yeah,
never have imagined in my wildest dreams
yeah,
that I would be happy that I had it, and everything. And I tell everybody, as much as we talk about it, you're always thinking, no, this cannot happen. But it's it's been a very disturbing 24 months or so where that doesn't work. That wishing it away
yeah, yeah.
is not going to work. And
No, we're already in it now, and I don't want like listen. I don't like fear porn. I don't want to get people
no,
worried,
no, no, of course not, of course not.
but no, get ready. I always tell people, like, if you think of it as insurance, okay? So I got a year's supply of food. I got some radios. I got a good med kit. I've got a couple of solar panels so I can recharge the batteries on the radios. And I got a
Hmm.
couple of firearms. Now, If you're just getting started prepping, all of that will cost you $2,000, $3,000.
Yes.
I mean, that's nothing.
Yes.
What do you pay for car
Okay.
insurance?
Sure.
What do you pay for health insurance?
Hmm.
So go out, get all this stuff, because people, when they contact me for a consultation, they're already panicking, right? Oh, I realize now I got to get ready, and I haven't done anything. What should I do first? How long does it take? I said it takes you a week, and it takes about $2,000-3,000. Listen, it's
Yeah.
also good to get some training, firearms training, self-defense training, wilderness survival training, medical emergency skills. That's good to get, and that's going to take you longer. But to get 6 months worth of food, a shotgun. I get a shotgun, a big 5 department store, $250. It's not a
Yeah.
big deal.
Yes.
Ham radio, $60 on Amazon. You get all that
Yes.
stuff together,
Yes.
you put it in your house, and now you don't have to worry anymore because you're ready, you're prepared. You
Right.
won't go
There's only
hungry.
so much that you can control. There's only so much you
Exactly.
can
There's only
control.
so much you can control, anyways.
Yes, and that's what sometimes people get overwhelmed because they it's like no, there's only so much you could do. Like what you said, the prepare part,
Yeah.
and the rest just gonna have to wait and see
Yeah.
what happens. And one thing I wanted to ask you, and I'm saying this again based on my own experience. I remember when 2001, when 9/11 occurred,
Mm-hmm.
we all the communications went down because they were jammed. You know,
That's right.
I had my sons were in high school, and after that, I remember telling them if something ever happens, because remember this was fresh out of 9/11 when everybody was totally wigged out with terrorism and
Yeah.
God, was this going to happen again? And I remember making a plan with my sons that I said, if something ever happens and we cannot communicate, I want you to go to your grandmother's house because she lived very close to their high school. Okay? And I'm wondering if people should do the same thing.
Oh,
Whereas if
absolutely.
something happens and communications, like what everybody depends on nowadays, which is your cellular, right?
Yeah.
For some reason, it's out.
Yeah.
Do you have a pre-plan of this is where we're going to go? Don't worry if you
Absolutely.
can't talk to me or reach me. This is either where we're going to meet or we're all going to go to this point.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Oh,
And
yeah.
from there,
I teach that, and when I do my consultations and when I'm talking
yeah,
to groups, you need to have a plan, and you need to have two plans. One is a rendezvous, and one is a
yes,
retreat. So a rendezvous location is okay. I live in a small town. Now, if the power goes out and I
hmm,
can't phone you, and the wife's at the office, and the kids are at school, and the husband's at the factory or whatever, what's everybody going to do? Maybe you can't get back to your house. So the rendezvous location is somebody within 5-10 miles. Could be a neighbor, it could be a family member that has a house. Then that's where you go. You go there first, whatever's closest. So if
right,
you got a family member or a friend that's close to the school where your kids go to, now you better coordinate this with the school too, because the schools have a lockdown protocol, right? So
yeah.
your kids can't get out of school if it's an emergency, and I'm not sure I agree with that. For most
I was
people,
going to say, I've heard of some versions where they, especially if your child is older, obviously, which is, depending on what the situation is leave.
yeah. So, but you got to have somewhere to go. So you
Well,
have
yeah,
to
of
plan
course,
this
obviously.
in advance. You have to do this right now. Sit
Hmm.
down with your family, and
Yes,
if the power goes out and I can't get a hold of you, and it's an emergency, okay. The kids, you go to grandma's house.
right,
Okay. The wife, you go to my buddy. He's got a house there close to your office.
right,
Okay. And I will, as the father and the man of the house, I will come and get you guys. Stay where you
right.
are in those locations. I will come to you,
Hmm.
just in case they can't get back home. And then the other thing is a retreat location. So let's say there's no way for me to get across town because the whole town is on fire, or there's a
Exactly.
chemical spill. So I can't get to you. You stay at the rendezvous location for 3 days unless you have to leave. But you stay there for 3 days. If I can't get to you in 3 days, then we all meet at another location which is out of town, maybe 50 miles
Right.
away. And that, again, could be maybe you have a relative or a friend. But even if you don't have that, maybe you know there's a campground there that you used to go
Exactly.
camping to, or there's a hotel. We'll all meet at the Super 6 or the Super 8 hotel on Highway 213 on the outskirts of town. We'll meet there. That's your retreat location. So then if you can't, so you make it there and I will come and get you. So you need to plan that in
Right.
advance.
Yes. And people don't realize how important that is.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
when something like that happens, even if it's for a couple of days, okay, where communications go down,
Yeah.
I can see people running around with like chickens without a head
Oh, yeah.
because we're so used to this that um, when you can't, nothing works, whether it's a landline or a cellular or anything is not working.
Yeah.
People will go crazy. I can tell that already.
Oh, yeah.
And
Because you're wondering, where's my wife? Where's my kids? Are they okay? Where did they
yes,
go? Should I go to the office? Should I go to the school?
yes,
Well, I mean, you will freak out. You will panic like crazy. And so
yes,
simply having a plan and then get the family to sit down and you talk about in case of an emergency, this is plan A,
yes,
rendezvous. Plan B, retreat. And the plan B, retreat, best to find a place that you can stay at for a couple of weeks.
right,
Rendezvous, and a rendezvous could be a coffee shop too, right? Like if you don't have anybody in your neighborhood or whatever, okay, I'll meet you at
hmm
the Starbucks on the corner of. Go
right,
there, and at least you have water and food and washroom, and you stay there, and I will come and get you. But and if you
exactly,
have to stay overnight, then ask the proprietors if you can sleep on the floor, whatever, and if not, then sleep on the front door. I will find you. But the retreat location
yes,
is if it's really serious, then let's go there.
right,
It's a campground, and then you can set up a tent and bring as much food with you as you can when you're leaving, and we'll stay up there for a couple of weeks until things blow over. But you got to
right.
plan that out right now, folks.
Yes, yes. People think sometimes only preparation is like, food and water and medicine, but the plan. You need a plan, as in amongst whoever is in your family,
Yeah,
whatever. And even if you live by yourself, that you might have family that lives outside that you're going to tell them, look, if something like this happens, this is what I'm planning to do.
yeah,
So if you don't hear from me,
yeah,
and I tell everybody when Hurricane Andrew, just because I was run over, I was plowed under by Hurricane Andrew in 1992. Um, Everything went down. My house, everything was gone, and I left two of my shepherds guarding what was left of my household goods. There
wow,
was no windows. The windows blew out with the frames and everything. I had two big shepherds,
yeah,
which when I would run errands, I left them inside the house.
yeah,
And God forbid anybody would run in there. Not that I had that much left, but anyway,
yeah,
um, I remember that what I did was I had the voicemail through the phone system, which was in the Bell Systems, their central office, and eventually I got to one of the few, because this was when they had public phones still around in 1992,
yeah, yeah,
and I called in there and I put a voicemail. My greeting was, I'm not picking up messages. Maybe I'll pick it up every couple of days. I'm okay.
yeah, yeah,
You know, I
yeah,
will call you. I will pick up my message at least once a day or every other day.
yeah,
And I left that message on there.
yeah.
All right. And believe it or not, that worked like a charm. People don't realize that sometimes you
Yeah,
just use
no,
your
that's
voicemail.
that's another good thing. Yeah, use the voicemail. If you have a phone answering machine, put a message on that. You have reached Marlene. Marlene is at the rendezvous location.
Yep. Exactly. And don't say what the rendezvous location
Yeah,
is.
don't say
Just
what
say
it
the
is.
rendezvous location.
Yeah,
Right. Exactly.
and worst case scenario, if you can't get a hold of me and you go to the house and I'm not there, look
Mm-hmm.
on the inside of the bathroom door, and I will put a note there.
Yes.
Things like that. So you
Yes.
got to think this through. And again, like I said,
Mm-hmm.
being smart about this, you'll survive anything if you're cunning and ruthless. But you do have to think it
Yes, we
through.
have to.
Yeah.
We have to. You have to come back, Stefan. We got to keep talking about this cunning and ruthless stuff. We do.
I'm trying
We
to teach
really
it,
do.
Marlene. I try to teach
No,
it.
let me tell you something. I know it sounds really, but we need to do what do they call it? You know when when you cram for a test,
Yeah,
we're all way behind the eight ball on the cunning and ruthless stuff. Let me tell you.
yeah,
We think that by seeing The Walking Dead, that was enough. Oh yeah, like it was just a show, and then all of a sudden we're facing a possibility, not of zombies, obviously, but
yeah,
where all these things that make the lubricants that make our society work and people obey laws might go
yeah,
psh, uh, and that's why the ruthless and cunning, we have to take away the stigma attached to it,
yeah,
as in being a you undesirable human being, as
yeah,
in if you need self-preservation
yeah. Well,
is a
Marlene,
good thing. Yeah.
my throat is getting dry.
Yes, and I know, and I could, but I'm going to be contacting you so we can come back and talk about some more ruthless and cunning things and food cache and all these other prep stuff, and
Yeah,
also the
and
mental aspect.
if I may, I'll promote my website.
Absolutely, yes. I'm
Yeah,
going to have a link to the to your website and the credits of the show. But for
yeah.
the podcast listeners, what is your website address?
It's China Strategies, one word,
Okay.
.com. That's my main website. My other website is called
Mm-hmm.
formingcommunities.com, and that's based on my upcoming book on how to get people together and work together to survive this. I mean, if we're going to
Yes.
survive this, we have to do what our great great grandparents did: mutual
Yes.
aid societies,
Yes.
food co-ops, homeschooling,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
emergency medical clinics. We can do it ourselves. We don't need a hospital. You get 50 families
Yes.
to all chip in. We can open our own medical clinic. You get
Yes.
the doctors to volunteer their time. You reach out to them,
Mm-hmm.
and you can pay them some money too. They come in once a
Yes.
week at the clinic, and everybody in your community goes. If they're sick, they go in there once a week. You pay them. That's what our great grandparents did.
Yes.
So we need to
Yes.
form
Yes.
communities. And if you go to my website, chinastrategies.com, I offer consultations. I'll speak with you for 2 hours for only
Okay.
$100, and
That's great.
I cater whatever my advice is to your situation. So if
Right.
you live
Exactly.
in the city, I'll tell you how to survive in the city. If you live in the suburbs, I'll tell you how to survive in the suburbs. If you live in the country, I'll tell you how to survive in the country. If you're by yourself, I'll give you strategies for how you can survive on your own. And, if you have a family, what to do with your family. So just like what we've been talking about, that's what I do with my clients.
Absolutely.
So,
Yes. But tailor made for whatever their situation is. And you sound like you're a realist, which
oh,
is you're not going to tell them what they want to hear. You're going
no,
to tell
no.
them what they need. Like, not what you want, but what you need.
Yeah. I mean, it's not
Yeah.
scary, and like, did I scare you today?
No, it does. No, no.
No.
I can. It's not scary. I believe it or not. I'd rather. I know sounds so hokey, but I'd rather be prepared and not need it than need it and not be prepared.
Exactly. Exactly.
And I am not a paranoid personality, but just like I said, because I lived in South Florida, because I went through hurricanes. In other words, living without electricity
Mm-hmm.
in reality for shorter lengths of time. But in '92, when I went through, and I saw how quickly that devolved,
Yeah.
that gave me an understanding that maybe a lot of people don't have.
Yeah.
That's not just Hollywood.
Yeah. Oh,
When you see
no.
it in the movies or a program,
Yeah.
it does happen. And a lot of the emergency services, they're how far can they stretch?
Oh,
Even the military.
within 3 hours,
That does
every emergency service is going to be swamped.
yes,
I know
yeah,
because we had simple power outage here in Toronto about 4 years ago. Half the city, the power went out, right? Went out for 5 days. I'm on the ham radio.
yes,
I'm listening to police, fire, and ambulance, right?
right,
They're swamped in 3 hours.
yes,
All the ambulances are out, all the trucks are out, all the police are out. There's no help coming.
right.
So, they had their own priorities. Another thing, which is
No,
something I've been trying to put together a program for, is that if you're in a seniors building, no help is coming.
no.
You better
No.
organize among your fellow residents in that building and have a plan on what to do, right? Stockpile a little bit of food and, get your radios and your flashlights because you're going to be on your own. Because I know,
Yes.
with the ambulances and the fire department, I mean, there were children swept
Yes.
away in flash floods. They're searching the ravines for them. And, pregnant women trapped in elevators. And
Yes.
that was their priority, and I understand it. We got a choice: we can save these children, or we can go to the old age home. They're going to go and save the children, and I don't blame them for that.
What was it in 2017? Hurricane, was it Irma? I can't remember Maria or Irma, because I know one plowed through Puerto Rico. I think it was Maria that came up the state in in an old people's home, a nursing home in
Hmm.
Broward County, which is just north of Miami-Dade County.
Yeah,
A bunch of residents died because nobody they left them there. They
they
left them
leave
there.
them there, yes, because and then, listen, I know it's terrible, but I don't blame them either because the nurses and the attendants, they're going home to look after their families.
Oh, yes. But I mean, if they thought that somebody, like, in other words, like you said, emergency services are taking care of emergencies. And as a matter of fact, I believe the owners or the managers or something were brought up on charges
Yeah,
for of their inaction or
yeah,
not trying at least to get them out, the ones they could. And a lot of people don't realize, just like when, if there's inclement weather or if there's a danger, guess what? If sometimes 911 personnel will not go into certain scenarios
no,
if their life is going to be in danger.
yeah,
People don't realize that.
yeah,
If you think they're going to come in like the cavalry over the hill,
no.
they're not. They're
So
not.
yeah, I should put that program together because I could probably make a small fortune going around to nursing homes and teaching them how to be prepared.
You could, especially in Florida. We have a lot of, a
Retirees.
lot of
Yeah.
nursing homes, ALFs. As a matter of fact, I remember when I placed my mom in an ALF,
Mm-hmm.
one of the things I looked at was they had a huge generator, a
Yeah.
big one in the back that
Yeah.
could run the household
Yeah.
without a problem
Yeah.
because of that situation that I didn't want her to be in a place
Yeah.
that would have an electrical, no electricity in it.
Yeah.
But absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Some food
That
for thought.
huge generator
I,
will probably run out of fuel within 3 days.
don't.
I'm just
Believe it or
saying,
not,
I'm a
I
realist.
have
Okay, so yeah.
no. I know those propane tank ones, and I have one myself,
Yeah.
and it supposedly will fuel me for about a week. But then after the week, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
But I already have a backup for that. But that's a conversation for another day because if not, we'll keep on talking into infinity.
I know
Thank you
we're
so
having
much, Stefan.
such a
It
good
has been
time, aren't we?
absolutely. I know, fixing the world kind of or whatever. But thank you again, Stefan. It has been wonderful speaking to you,
Oh,
and I
you're
want to
welcome,
wish you the
Marlene.
best of luck on all your projects.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
take
And
care.
you take care too.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.